hidden for 20 years, and exposed by Scarlet Witch. This video is purely for entertainment, and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting, and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 51. Lorna and Susan. 039. S-tight uniforms. Natasha Romanoff walked down the street in despair, randomly found a piece of land, and sat down directly. He grabbed his hair with both hands, and buried his head. Although it was only a glimpse, she knew that it was Bai Xi. She wanted to rush up, but she held back when she saw Bai Xi's appearance. More than 10 years have passed. Both she and Yelena went from children to adults, but Bai Xi still didn't change. Moreover, Lorna and Susan around him are not ordinary people. She knows. Big Bai Xi, what the hell are you? Natasha Romanoff couldn't say the word after all. When I was a child, I could shout with Yelena. But looking at it now, Bai Xi looks younger than her, although she is now at the peak of her charisma. Natasha Romanoff felt that Bai Xi was like a mystery. She and Yelena didn't know Bai Xi at all. All I know is that he was a neighbor when he was a child. Even though he has been in contact with him for 2 years, he still doesn't know anything. It was like a cloud of fog that failed to dispel him for 2 years. Looking at it now, more than 10 years later, the fog is still there. I still have vague memories. It's cola chicken wings, dry fried beef, fried noodles. This taste makes Natasha Romanoff very uncomfortable. Although she has long decided to be a widow for Bai Xi all her life. Be a real black widow. But now, Natasha Romanoff is lost. She didn't know what to do with herself. Maybe she was wrong. After all, I haven't seen each other for so long, and Asians actually look the same to her. Natasha Romanoff made excuses for herself inside. She murmured, if it was Yelena, would you rush over regardless? Hey, new here, you took my place. A voice sounded. Natasha Romanoff looked up and saw a homeless man talking to her with a garbage bag. I'm not your companion. The two scumbags Bai Xi and Lorna watched attentively as Susan made her battle suit with various things. Definitely, before that, she has to confirm what will be invisible with her soon. She found that material, and then it was cut into uniforms. Which style do you think looks good? Suddenly, Susan asked Bai Xi. Lorna had already noticed that Susan's feelings for Bai Xi were different, but she didn't express anything. I just pretend to be jealous sometimes. I like tighter ones, and the one-piece ones are good. Bai Xi suddenly thought of the uniform of the invisible female Susan in the comics. The whole body is a dreamy azure blue, the tight-fitting one-piece uniform, and even the high heels seem to be connected together just perfect. A bodysuit? Sounds good. Susan tilted her head to imagine, then smiled. Bai Xi and Lorna never imagined that Susan still had this skill. By the time Bai Xi made dinner, Susan had finished. Susan, it's done, Bai Xi shouted, and Susan came down from above with dad on high heels. The apartment has several floors and looks like a sky villa. Just no gardens and lawns. Bai Xi was immediately stunned. Susan was wearing a tight blue one-piece uniform, which showed her bumpy figure perfectly. Coupled with her blonde hair, wheat-colored skin, soft and perfect facial features. A smile can take away his soul. Not to mention him. Even Lorna was stunned. She immediately said, Susan, can you make a uniform for me too? I want the green one. Definitely, no problem, Susan replied with a smile on her face. It seems that she is also satisfied with the effect of the uniform and Bai Xi's reaction. Use your ability, Bai Xi said. Susan immediately disappeared in front of the two of them. Very perfect, Lorna said immediately. If she didn't use ability to sense it, she couldn't find it at all. So she didn't even want to enjoy the food. Just waiting for Susan to finish eating, he took her to discuss his battle suit. Susan only ate a few mouthfuls and looked at the table with reluctance when she left. I'll make it for you later. Can I say no? Susan replied immediately. No. Lorna hit her with a smile. Afterwards, despite her hard work, Susan helped Lorna work all night. Lorna thought the one-piece tights looked good, so she asked Susan to do it for her too. Only she likes green. Because of her hair, the energy light displayed by her ability is all green. Later, Lorna also chose a black waist ring around her waist. Definitely, and most importantly, she also chose a cape point. This made Susan struggle straight to the next day point when Bai Xi saw it. He nodded point as expected of Lorna, who likes big scenes. She has to get a cape. Did you think it was Superman? However, Bai Xi estimates that Lorna will not wear this uniform very much either. She may still prefer her leather jacket and trousers. Give Susan a break, and then we'll find a new home. Bai Xi said point, if you are used to living in one place, you will always feel tired, no matter how good the scenery is. Hearing his words, even Lorna and Susan jumped for joy. Yelena was in a basement, waiting for orders from her superiors. It's a pity that even Dreykov didn't know where Bai Xi and the others went point. After all, this is Lighthouse Country point and their Red House doesn't have much ability here point, not to mention SHIELD. Organizations like the FBI will teach them how to behave point. If it was before the 1990s, their Leviathan and the Red House could still get a lot of news in the Lighthouse Country point. Now it's getting worse and worse. Every year is worse than a year, therefore Dreykov can only make Yelena stand by, and when the Red House finds Bai Xi, he will continue to dispatch. He has made new plans, celebrating the 7-day National Day holiday and reading books. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediately rush to recharge. Event time, October 1st to October 7th. Chapter 52 Hidden Rewards for 16 years. Nick. Natasha Romanoff sat directly across from Nick Fury, hands on his lap, staring at Nick Fury. Nick Fury knew immediately that things were official. What's the matter, Natasha Romanoff? He asked. Natasha Romanoff just looked at him. Why are you hiding from me? Nick Fury's expression didn't change point. He knew it was going to happen eventually point. It's time to go. I'm here for your own good, Natasha Romanoff. Nick Fury was silent for a moment, then spoke directly. Why? Natasha Romanoff just couldn't stop shaking her head, her eyes turning red instantly. Nick Fury's answer already represents the truth point. That is Bai Xi point. And he always knew point, but didn't tell her. Natasha Romanoff did not wait for Nick Fury to answer, and continued excitedly. Why do you always like to make decisions for us for the reason of good for others? Then, you know now. What are you going to do? Nick Fury asked oppressively with his hands on the table. You going to find it directly? How do you deal with him? Natasha Romanoff, the times are different, and you are not who you were when you were young. Are you sure he can accept what you are doing now? Natasha Romanoff's eyes were red, and she shook her head, while pursing her lips. He didn't dare to look at Nick Fury again. I'm just waiting for a moment to tell you the truth. Nick Fury's tone softened. A moment when he can accept you and go back to his old life. Natasha Romanoff looked at him firmly. No, you just want to use me. Natasha Romanoff said. He must have something worth your attention. I'll never help you deal with him. After Natasha Romanoff finished speaking, she immediately stood up and left. Nick Fury looked at Natasha Romanoff's back with an ugly expression. Point for an agent. It is still Black Widow. There is something above all point. This is undoubtedly a failure. Where are you going? Nick Fury asked. Find a place to be quiet. Natasha Romanoff wiped her eyes and nodded to Mariah Hill, who had just come over. The three of Bai Xi still set their sights on a villa in the suburbs. There are garden lawns and other facilities are also sound. Point maybe not the suburbs either, because this is New Jersey. Point New Jersey is only separated from New York by a river, but it is considered a country by New Yorkers. Many New York elites would rather watch the bad team Knicks play than come to New Jersey to watch the Nets, but it doesn't matter to Bai Xi and the others. The previous villa area was good, but unfortunately the scenery was tired. Point. Although New Jersey is dubbed the country by New Yorkers, it is actually doing very well. Point. After all, it's just across the river from New York, so it can't be any different. Bai Xi's very dashing direct debit. Point. Many people say that people in the Lighthouse country don't like to buy a house, they like to rent a house. Actually nonsense. Point. Because most renters can't afford to buy a house. Who can afford to rent a house? It may not be expensive to buy a house in the Lighthouse country, but other expenses can explode, and ordinary people simply cannot afford it. Point. There are even $1 villas in Detroit. But would you dare to buy them? The villa was about the same size as Tony's apartment, with the addition of a garden and lawn. Definitely, the loss is that I can't see the night in New York at a glance. Point. After so many things The three of Bai Xi felt a little tired, so they decided to stay at home and not go anywhere. Point in this case, time seems to have moved a lot faster. Time flies by. Ding. On this day, Bai Xi's mind dinged. Point this scary sound had never been heard before. Point the system seemed to target him on purpose. Congratulations to the host, who has achieved 16 years of hidden strength and received a reward. Listening, talking, super hearing. You can hear any movement. You can hear the hearts of others. But at this moment, Bai Xi felt like his head was about to explode. Point countless other people's hearts broke into his head. Point for example, Lana, who seemed to be teasing fat Ding on the surface, actually said, "Why is this idiot Bai Xi in a daze again? Two big beauties are not enough to see." There is also Susan, who is basking in the sun with a serious face. "I really hope that I can live this leisurely life forever, but I don't know who is the elder between me and Lorna." Bai Xi didn't even know. Susan, who seemed to be honest, was thinking about this, and Lorna thought he was a nerd. Point does he stay? Not at all. Point but now, Bai Xi doesn't have much time to think about these issues, because there are too many voices in his mind. It doesn't matter if there are empty minds around him. Point he couldn't tell where the voices were coming from. Point it took an unknown amount of time for Bai Xi to get used to it. Point then I chose to close listening voluntarily. Point this ability is so torturous. No wonder even Superman doesn't use this ability very often. Bai Xi felt like he was about to break into a cold sweat. Point he looked at his panel. Host, Bai Xi. Person, Dimension Mephisto. Physical, Demigod. Items, Symbiosis Talisman, Mantra Lasso, Fountain of Youth, Bumblebee, Elf Ball, Supreme Lord of the Rings. Ability, Batman's fighting ability, teleportation, advanced version, serious punch, hot sight, time travel, frozen 1,000 miles, mirror space, listening, super hearing. But right now, Uncle Bai Xi, Uncle Bai Xi. Other people's voices suddenly appeared in Bai Xi's mind. Point, but this time is different. This is Yelena. Bai Xi immediately analyzed it. Point Yelena misses him so much. The setting of truth listening is like this. Those who are related to him, or those who miss him so much, will be heard directly. Point, and in this world, the person who misses him most is Yelena. Bai Xi hesitation for a moment, and then his figure disappears directly, celebrating the 7-day National Day holiday and reading books. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediately rush to recharge. Event time, October 1st to October 7th. Chapter 53 Physical Cracking Mind Control. The disheveled goddess of death Hela stared blankly at the nothingness ahead. Point her black eyeshadow made her look extremely dull at the moment. Point she is not an impatient person. Point, because Hela has spent thousands of years alone in the sight. Point and not crazy, so it wasn't that she didn't know she needed to wait. Point, but after so long, she also wanted to understand. Point I was tricked by Bai Xi. Point her dignified goddess of death was actually played by a mortal. Well, although he is much stronger than the average mortal. Point, but it is an indisputable fact that Hela was tricked. Point, so she constantly cursed Bai Xi in her heart and wanted to be a villain. Point how embarrassing would this be if it got out? The dignified goddess of death, the eldest princess of Asgard, was being played like this. Not to mention that the dimension key was deceived. Even the body and mind were deceived. Liar, big liar. Hela constantly shouted inwardly, "When I go out, I'm going to kill you and Odin together." Hela played with the night sky sword in his hand, and Bai Xi's performance was inexhaustible. Point it's a pity that she can't leave here, no matter how much she hates it. Odin's magic, and the approval of Bai Xi, the master of dimensions, she can't go against it. She is the goddess of death, and can only continue to be locked up. Point wait until the day Odin's magic can't hold her down, or Bai Xi will let her out. But the more she thought about it, the more remote Hela felt. The longer Asgard lives, the stronger she becomes. Even if she goes out now, she will only be beaten by Odin, so how can she break Odin's magic? As for Bai Xi, men can't die. Bai Xi naturally didn't know Hela's curse. Point after all, she is the goddess of death, not the goddess of swearing, and can't affect him. At the moment, Bai Xi was standing outside the door of a basement. Point he could already feel the symbiotic talisman getting hot. Point this means that Yelena is indeed inside. Point, but I don't know why Yelena didn't come out. After hesitation, Bai Xi reached out and knocked on the door. Dang. Dang, the door didn't open. Knock again. The door opens, but a gun barrel sticks out of it. Boom, and there was no hesitation. Shot directly at him. Bai Xi naturally dodged with a dodge. I saw Yelena open the door from the inside and aim at him. Poker face. Yelena saw him as if she saw a stranger. Without any expression fluctuations, this made Bai Xi feel a little cold water. Yelena, Bai Xi said. But before she finished speaking, Yelena started again. Bai Xi constantly dodges. Suddenly, he thought of a possibility. General, Yelena has an abnormality. She is fighting with people. The assistant walked behind Dreykov and said. The screen in front of him suddenly appeared. He brought it to the door himself. Dreykov burst into laughter instantly. The controlled assistant, who had already done the experiment, did not laugh. Quick, post a message to tell Yelena not to kill him, but to arrest him, and let the two women around him come. Dreykov suddenly laughed. He was going to use Bai Xi as a bait. In this way, his Black Widow army is even more powerful. With two super ability users, especially Lorna's ability, he was simply drooling. If it really succeeds, isn't it invincible? Bai Xi looked at Yelena in front of him and suddenly thought that she might have been controlled by Dreykov. Yelena, do you remember me? Bai Xi asked, while dodging. Yelena naturally couldn't touch him. He can dodge most of Yelena's attacks with just Batman's fighting ability. As he expected. Yelena didn't answer. She is controlled. Bai Xi was extremely angry. Although he had known for a long time that this would be the result, but it really happened, it still made him very angry. Maybe he shouldn't keep running away. Bai Xi dodged carefully, not daring to hurt Yelena. It's a pity that there is too much movement here, and many people have been alarmed. Looking at Yelena, who was expressionless, and said that she was a killer. Bai Xi also had a headache for a while. How exactly? He carefully looked at all his items and abilities. There was no way to deal with mind control or soul. I should have learned about soul astral from Ancient One. Bang, bang, bang. Seeing that she couldn't hit Bai Xi, Yelena shot directly. It's just that she's not aiming at the key parts, obviously trying to make Bai Xi lose the action ability. Drip, drip, and at the moment, a whistle sounded outside. Isn't it looking for trouble for such a swaggering shooting in New York? But Yelena seemed to turn a deaf ear. Well, even if she heard it, it didn't help. Bai Xi at the moment knew that everything about her was a consciousness deep in her heart. She might be able to know what was going on, but she couldn't control it. This is also the reason why Bai Xi can hear her inner calling. If it wasn't for the ability of listening to your heart, Bai Xi would not have known about it. Suddenly, Bai Xi thought of a way to crack mind control. Although Dreykov used a potion to control the Black Widow, it can actually be cracked in one way. That is physical cracking. Boom. Bai Xi teleported behind Yelena and knocked her unconscious with a knife. True physical awakening. You know, when Hawkeye was controlled by Mind Gem, it was directly cracked by Natasha Romanoff with this trick. The same goes for Wanda's controls. No way. The potion made by Dreykov is more powerful than these two things. The world was already under his control. So Bai Xi felt it and then used the power of dimension to help Yelena clean up the last remaining potion. So he hugged her and immediately moved away. Celebrating the 7-day National Day holiday and reading books. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediately rush to recharge. Event time, October 1st to October 7th. Chapter 54. You are awake, little princess. This girl is really heavy now. Bai Xi came back with Yelena in his arms and immediately smiled. Yelena had a pained expression on her stunned face. The facial features can be vaguely seen as a child. Bai Xi put her down and scratched her nose. Then he carefully left the room. Yelena, Lorna and Susan were outside the door and immediately asked when they saw him come out. Bai Xi nodded. It's really her. Lorna also didn't know how to feel. She is happy for Bai Xi. But what should she do? Forget it. They have been away from Bai Xi for a long time anyway. Taking a deep breath, Lorna saw Bai Xi walk into the kitchen. I'll cook. Lorna immediately chased after him and said but the voice of Bai Xi came. No, I'm going to cook for her myself. She must have been waiting for a long time. General, Yelena has failed. The masked assistant spoke to Dreykov emotionlessly. I've seen it, and it's rubbish. Yelena was also missing from Drakhov's screen. This annoyed him a little. But fortunately, Yelena still has a tracker in her thigh. They can easily know where it is. New Jersey. So you are hiding here, Drakhov said. But he also realized a problem. This Bai Xi is not an ordinary person. He blushes for himself. He had thought Bai Xi was just an ordinary person and was going to let Yelena tie him down. But now Yelena was taken away directly. And somehow his control lost its effect. Unfortunately, this is in the lighthouse country. Drakhov felt a little powerless. If it was before the 1990s, they were not afraid of the lighthouse state. But now times have long since changed. They are all remnants of the old era, and the new era has no ships that carry the Red House. What? Yelena made a pained voice. She felt as if she had been hit in the head with a hammer, and now she was groggy and in severe pain. She barely reached out and scratched the back of her head. Then he opened his eyes dimly. Where am I? Yelena's eyes seemed to be blocked by a white fog. After a while, the white fog in front of him dissipated, and then a person looked down at her. Yelena was stunned. It's the face she haunts so much that it makes her feel like she's dreaming. She even reached out and touched it in disbelief. Seeing her appearance, Bai Xi felt sad and funny. You are awake, little princess, Bai Xi said in a gentle tone. Yelena's eyes turned red when she heard these three words. This is real. Definitely. Yelena threw herself into Bai Xi's arms regardless of her pain. Bai Xi could only drag her hard to prevent her from falling. White Yelena was suddenly speechless. She didn't know how to shout. Bai Xi still hasn't changed, just like when she was a child. Yelena said with a smile while crying. I've become like this, but you haven't changed. As she spoke, she wiped her tears with her hands in Bai Xi's arms. Bai Xi stroked her messy blonde hair. No matter what you become, you are my little princess. Yelena burst into tears and laughed. She felt very happy. What she remembers the most is not even the fake parents, but Bai Xi. In her childhood, only Bai Xi gave her the feeling of home. Beauty Yelena suddenly didn't know what to say. She always thought that when she met again, she would have endless things to say to Bai Xi. But this scene really happened, but she couldn't say a word. Maybe it's because Bai Xi didn't turn into a bad old man as she imagined. Bai Xi also felt a little dull. So he said, are you hungry? I prepared your favorite food for you. Yelena looked at Bai Xi with red eyes and nodded. Then Bai Xi directly carried her out. Yelena was a little embarrassed and wanted to get down and go by herself. But Bai Xi said, I'd better hug the little princess. Yelena stopped resisting immediately, just grabbed the symbiotic charm with her hands. The hot symbiotic talisman told her that it was true. As beautiful as a dream, looking at the table full of her favorite dishes, Yelena's mind was filled with memories of her childhood. Then treat this as a dream, Bai Xi said with a smile. Lana and Susan did not appear, do not know where to hide. They were also very sensible and gave up all the space to Bai Xi and Yelena. It's not a dream, it's real, Yelena said firmly. Afterwards, Bai Xi saw her grab the knife and fork on the table and stabbed directly into his thigh. Just when Bai Xi thought she was being stimulated, Yelena took out a chip from her thigh. She crushed it, then took a breath and said, he can't track me now. I still want him to come after him. Bai Xi sneered. Seeing Yelena's legs hurt a little. Afterwards, Yelena's eyes were red and tears were constantly eating. As if this is not food, but her beautiful memory. Yelena's chatterbox finally opened. Although she was silent a lot after becoming Black Widow, that definitely didn't include Bai Xi. Uncle, why haven't you changed? Because my ability is extraordinary. Who the hell are you? Bai Xi was silent for a while and said, you and Natasha Romanoff's Asgardian. Yelena couldn't hold back her tears anymore. She took her chicken leg, took a bite, and said with a crying voice, it's still the taste of my childhood. Yeah, you're still that chicken thigh girl. Bai Xi suddenly remembered the scene of Yelena chasing Natasha Romanoff to get the chicken legs back. Both laughed. Afterwards, Yelena took a glass of water handed over by Bai Xi and put a drop of Fountain of Youth in it, celebrating the 7-day National Day holiday and reading books. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediately rush to recharge. Event time. October 1st to October 7th. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 55. Natasha Romanoff, You Lose. Bai Xi and Yelena talked about these years, which made Bai Xi feel a little sigh. When our family left Ohio, we didn't know where we flew to. It seems to be Cuba. Yelena doesn't have much memory of that time. Then Natasha Romanoff and I were both taken into that place, the Red House. I haven't seen her again, but I know she has always been as brutally trained as I have been. They taught us everything, even insulted our character. Bai Xi listened to Yelena say this in the most plain tone. It's past. Bai Xi rubbed her messy hair and hugged her. I didn't protect you back then, and it won't be like this in the future. Bai Xi said with emotion. If he was as strong as he is now. Who else can take Natasha Romanoff and Yelena? I know. Yelena forced a smile. But he still said in his heart, but I can't go back. Some things have been lost before you know how to cherish them. And people are always moving forward. As Black Widow, she couldn't look back. Yelena, who was in Bai Xi's arms, raised her head and said, I want to kill Drekov. I'll help you. Bai Xi nodded. Yelena and Natasha Romanoff have suffered so much, and of course they have to pay it back tenfold. Then we need more help, Yelena said. Actually, you don't need to, but you said so. Bai Xi immediately laughed. Uncle Bai Xi, how strong are you? Yelena asked Bai Xi curiously. A little bit stronger than us. Before Bai Xi could speak, Lorna and Susan, who came downstairs, spoke up. Good guy. They all learned to answer quickly. This is Lorna. This is Susan. Bai Xi pointed at the two women and said to Yelena, don't you think that calling me uncle would be very inconsistent? No, I will call you Uncle Bai Xi for the rest of my life, Yelena said deliberately. Hearing this title, Bai Xi was really sad. It's a good memory, right? At night, Yelena lay looking at the empty ceiling, a little uncomfortable with this kind of life. She and Lorna communicate well. Lorna looks tugging, but is nice to people. Susan is even more gentle, and she is still a scholar. She seems to know everything. But she's not used to it. She is used to being surrounded by Black Widows who are trained like her. It is customary to be locked in handcuffs while sleeping. Get used to endless missions and life and death struggles. Habit. In short, the peaceful life was far from Yelena when she was 10 years old. I must kill Drekov, this human demon. Natasha Romanoff's legs were restlessly on the table, and she was leaning back on a chair, eating a sandwich in her hand. This thing tasted like chewing wax to her, but she got used to it. It's not that she didn't try to eat Chinese food in the past. But compared to what Bai Xi did, what are they? That was for the people of the Lighthouse Country, not the people of the Dragon Country. She finally understood this sentence. Sudden. She turned her head and looked towards the door. This is her apartment. After leaving SHIELD, she found an acquaintance and found a random place to live. The apartment is very humble. Many things are not even there, but it is far away from the hustle and bustle. But unexpectedly, it was found. She immediately took out the pistol from the drawer, but at this moment, the symbiotic charm was hot. Yelena? Natasha Romanoff thought to himself, but opened the safety on the pistol anyway. Even sisters cannot be fully trusted. What's more, Yelena is still working for the Red House. These two sisters can't wait to defeat each other at all times. It's been that way since childhood. Natasha Romanoff opened the door cautiously, and the pistol was immediately raised to aim. Yelena just stood outside the door, letting her aim at herself. Natasha Romanoff tilted her head and asked carefully, what do you want to do? I don't want to do anything. Natasha Romanoff. Yelena put her hands together in front of her, hearing her speak. Natasha Romanoff didn't put down her pistol, even though she seemed to be back to normal. Yelena didn't seem to know her before, but Natasha Romanoff still remembered it. I just want to beat you up, sure. Enough. Yelena suddenly started. She knocked the gun out of Natasha Romanoff's hand and punched Natasha Romanoff in the face. Natasha Romanoff naturally did the same. hitting Yelena directly in the face. The result is, each received a punch, and the corners of the mouth became red and swollen. Ah, Yelena shouted and kept attacking Natasha Romanoff. Natasha Romanoff is also not blindly defensive. Although he has lost the opportunity, he is still looking for opportunities. As a result, neither of them got any benefit. They all seem to have given up their defense, and they are completely killing 1000 enemies and self-defeating 800. I don't know how many moves. Yelena seized the opportunity, turned directly behind Natasha Romanoff, and then directly grabbed Natasha Romanoff's hair. Natasha Romanoff actually likes to wear her long hair. Natasha Romanoff, have you forgotten how to be an agent? Yelena asked behind her, before being elbowed in the face by Natasha Romanoff. But still grabbed Natasha Romanoff's hair and brought her down. Natasha Romanoff almost cried out in pain. Yelena pressed Natasha Romanoff directly to the floor regardless of the pain in her face. You lost, Natasha Romanoff, Yelena said with a slight smile, but the smile was bitter. You're just a sneak attack. But Natasha Romanoff refused to admit defeat. 100 more times you will lose, Yelena said. You can try. Natasha Romanoff resisted, but all limbs were immobilized. I think so too, but not now, Yelena said, and let go of Natasha Romanoff, lifted her off the ground, and walked directly out the door. Come with me, someone wants to see you. Yelena left without looking back. Natasha Romanoff hesitation, picks up the pistol and hides it, and immediately follows, celebrating the 7-day National Day holiday and reading books. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediately rush to recharge. Event time, October 1st to October 7th. Chapter 56. Tony, my bro, Iron-039, am dying. Natasha Romanoff ran downstairs, where a yellow sports car was parked. Downstairs Camaro, drip, in the car. Yelena tilted her head towards her. Natasha Romanoff opened the door and sat in the co-pilot. Who are you going to see? Drekov? Are you still working for him? Yelena stepped on the accelerator. No, I just want to buy his life. Natasha Romanoff looked at her suspiciously, then quickly fastened her seatbelt. The Hornet is fast and doesn't look like a Camaro at all. And Yelena is not afraid of being fined at all. Continue to overtake on the street and leave others behind. So I went around and came to a coffee shop. There is no one in this coffee shop, only one clerk. Natasha Romanoff followed Yelena out of the car, then watched Yelena push the door open and walked in. She could only see a back. Leaning on the sofa, sipping coffee leisurely. She followed Yelena over. Natasha Romanoff, long time no see. Bai Xi smiled at the haggard Natasha Romanoff. You. Natasha Romanoff looked at Bai Xi, speechless. She thought about the scene of meeting countless times. I just never thought it would be so simple. Just in a coffee shop. There is no romantic atmosphere and no crowd. Just like that. We met. All the hard work, the hardships she suffered, and the beatings she had endured seemed to be in vain, and she finally saw the person in her dream. Sit down, Bai Xi said to Natasha Romanoff and Yelena. Natasha Romanoff immediately sat across from him, and Yelena sat directly beside him. Natasha Romanoff looked at Yelena, as if asking, who are you, sister? But she also had to admit that she was preempted by Yelena again. Yelena was also more favored when she was a child. The same is true when she grows up. She met Bai Xi earlier than her and returned to him. Natasha Romanoff looked at Bai Xi and after a while said hoarsely, Bai Xi, stop calling me uncle. Natasha Romanoff. Bai Xi raised his hand to stop her. Natasha Romanoff couldn't help but bow his head and smiled, but still very reserved. She didn't show her teeth, and when the smile disappeared, she raised her head and said, looks like I'm older than you. You're 25. Natasha Romanoff, the best age for a woman. Bai Xi said. Now is the time for Natasha Romanoff to look at her best, and if she were a little older, she might not be so glamorous. Natasha Romanoff smiled, but you haven't changed. Bai Xi couldn't stop nodding. Everyone says that, but you can too. He asked the clerk to bring Natasha Romanoff a cup of coffee with a fountain of youth already in it. There are many more fountains of his youth. And just one drop can prolong life. But some things have changed. Natasha Romanoff took a sip of coffee and said something. So, you always knew about me. Hearing what Natasha Romanoff asked, Bai Xi immediately said, Yelena told me. He Couldn't say it honestly. Point otherwise, Natasha Romanoff would definitely punch him. Natasha Romanoff didn't know whether to believe it or not, but nodded anyway. Point Yelena said, at the moment, we are looking for you to invite you. Doing what? Kill Dreykov. Natasha Romanoff looked at Yelena and Bai Xi. I've been looking for him, but I can't find him. Same as Yelena. Natasha Romanoff naturally hated Dreykov. 2. The training method of the Red House. Don't even think that Black Widow will give up on it. At most, let the Black Widow fear, and then dare not betray. Later, Natasha Romanoff escaped and developed a control method. Don't worry, I can find him. Bai Xi spoke at this time. Then, I will join. Natasha Romanoff replied immediately. Bai Xi just had the ability to listen carefully, plus the instant movement that he could freely travel in and out of the 9 realms. No matter where Dreykov was hiding, he could not escape his pursuit. The 3 drank their coffee. Then stand up. Natasha Romanoff looked at Bai Xi and suddenly couldn't help hugging him. Thank you, she whispered. I miss you too, Natasha Romanoff. Bai Xi hugged Natasha Romanoff and then brought Yelena in. Sorry for making you suffer. Both of them buried their heads in his arms, and time seemed to stand still at this moment. This made the 3 of them feel as if they had returned to the maple tree back then. Huang Yi's Arxio fell. The swing was floating in the wind, and the years were still so peaceful. People outside the window looked at Bai Xi hugging from side to side, and they couldn't help but take out their cameras to capture this beautiful scene. The 3 of Bai Xi returned to the villa, and there were 5 people in the villa. Several people have known each other for a long time. Even Lorna and Natasha Romanoff have played each other a few times. I'm sorry before Lorna and Natasha Romanoff hug, but if there is another time, I won't let the water go. Me too. Bai Xi looked at the 2 and shook their heads, then said, before we find Dreykov, we must first find a solution to mind control. Dreykov has been tracking a renegade Black Widow who has an antidote in her hands, Yelena said. Do you know where she is? Bai Xi asked. Yelena shrugged. Forget it, let's just physically release the control. Bai Xi said. He didn't bother to use the 2 listening sessions to find someone. It was really torturous. Yelena touched the back of her head when she heard the words pain. Just when the 4 of them were looking at Bai Xi. Jingle bell, all eyes are on the phone. Bai Xi took out his phone, looked at Tony Stark's name, and immediately wanted to hammer him. What's the matter, Tony? Bai Xi asked. Bai, my good brother, I'm going to die. On the phone, Tony started yelling, isn't this still dead? Go eat and drink before you die. Bai Xi replied immediately. No, I'm serious, I'm poisoned by palladium. Hey, do you understand what palladium poisoning is? Tony said in a series of words, and it was obvious that he was really panicked. Bai Xi never thought he would tell himself. Really good brother. However, as a good brother, he continued to stab. I understand, that's why I said that you should eat and drink, and don't take it to heart when you are in trouble. That's it, I'm busy. Bai Xi hung up the phone and looked at the time on the phone. Time flies. Celebrating the 7-day National Day holiday and reading books. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediately rush to recharge. Event time, October 1st to October 7th. Chapter 57. Air Fortress. In the villa, Bai Xi closed his eyes and tilted his head. Countless noisy voices poured into his mind like junk files. Fortunately, he is strong enough. Demigod body, the personality of the dimension Mephisto, has made his strength reach an unknown realm. Therefore, Bai Xi can screen in his mind whether these sounds are needed. Suddenly, Bai Xi turned his head to face the west sky. He opened his eyes. His vision seemed to penetrate all obstacles, ignoring all distances. I found him, and at this time he flew into the sky. Bai Xi said. Polar bear technology, no joke. At this time, Dreykov had already developed the spacecraft. He put the base of the Red House into the sky. No wonder Natasha Romanoff and the others couldn't find the base. The most is to see Dreykov walking outside in other capacities. Fly to the sky. Natasha Romanoff tugged at her belt. Taking advantage of this time, they have already changed their clothes. Natasha Romanoff got the White Widow outfit out of nowhere, and Yelena did the same. The 2 knew that they were going to polar bears, where it was freezing and snowing. so it would be better to hide themselves in a white widow dress. But Lana and Susan are different. It's just as conspicuous as you want. Lana changed into the tight green battlesuit Susan had made for her, with a green cape behind her for some reason. Lana feels a little shy. It is not as domineering as her daily dress, but they all changed, and everyone else has uniforms. It doesn't seem like she wears another one. And Susan's was much better, at least not ashamed. It's the azure blue tight-fitting battlesuit of the Fantastic Four. She can hide perfectly. Looking at the four people's cross-dressing, Bai Xi felt that he was the inappropriate one. However, he thinks the battlesuit is really embarrassing, so he simply didn't think about it. Just asked the four people who were looking forward to it, "Are you all ready?" The four of them nodded in sync, as if they were all eager to try. Seeing them like this, Bai Xi immediately felt like he was forming a group to fight the boss. That's why the boss is a little weak. And what's the name of the team? Is it called the Widow Corps? But isn't that cursing myself? All come to me. Try to stick to me as closely as possible, otherwise there may be an accident. Bai Xi pretended to be serious. Sure enough, the four of them nervously grabbed a part of him and tried to squeeze him. Bai Xi, who had a serious expression, was instantly refreshed. Anyway, the four of them never thought that he actually did it on purpose. Why is it so tight to move in an instant? With the flash of several people's figures, they all disappeared in the villa. Nick Fury tapped on the table, looked across to good old Phil Coulson and said, "The time has come." Phil Coulson also nodded and said, "There is evidence that Tony Stark has suffered from palladium poisoning, and he must be very anxious now." "Where's Natasha Romanoff?" Nick Fury smiled that everything was in control. "She's on leave." Phil Coulson said, "Ah, you still on leave? You should ask him, Chief." Seeing Phil Coulson talking back, Nick Fury was a little helpless, and according to the latest news, she left with someone before. Nick Fury was a little helpless. The case of Natasha Romanoff is special. It is not an agent trained by SHIELD, so sometimes there will be privileges. Because you may be careless, make her dissatisfied, and then run away. Hurry up and think of a way for me, or let you seduce Tony Stark. Nick Fury glared at Phil Coulson for a moment. Phil Coulson's calm look was finally broken. "How do I seduce him? I'm not a woman." "Then you wear women's clothes." Phil Coulson wanted to cry without tears, so he could only rush to find a way. At least you have to find a playboy like Tony Stark, right? How hard is it to find a stealth sky fortress? Although it is not stealth in the traditional sense, it will not be discovered by machines, and it will never land. Except for the controlled Black Widow, few people can come up. Naturally, no one can know where the Red House's nest is. Even if you keep looking for it and turn over every inch of polar bear land, you may not find it. This is Drekhov's trump card. If there is no inner ghost to lead the way or take the initiative to be caught by the Red House, it is very difficult to get here. However, there are exceptions to everything. With a flash of light, Bai Xi and other 5 people appeared on the air fortress. This air fortress is naturally inferior to the helicarrier developed by SHIELD, because the helicarrier is invisible into senses. Even later, with Tony Stark's technology, it can also be revised. Definitely, the most important thing is that SHIELD is richer than the Red House. It's good that the Red House can send this thing to the sky. Where is this? They appear inside, in a small room. This is the base of the Red House. Bai Xi said, "Drekhov is very smart, knowing that if he is on the ground, no matter how deep he hides, he will be discovered. So he put the base in the air." "Yeah? No wonder." Both Natasha Romanoff and Yelena murmured. Then the two looked around. SHIELD has this thing too. Natasha Romanoff patted herself on the head. "Why didn't I think the Red House would do the same?" "What? Now?" All 4 looked at Bai Xi. Bai Xi pointed to the surveillance camera and said, "It's very simple. Just kill it." The moment they appeared, they were already discovered by Drekhov. Celebrating the 7-day National Day holiday and reading books. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediately rush to recharge. Event time, October 1st to October 7th. Chapter 58. Why are you so skilled? General, there are outsiders invading. Drekhov. suddenly heard the cry of his assistant. Then on the screen, Natasha Romanoff and Yelena turned to face the camera and smiled. Dreykov was instantly panicked. How did they get up when 5 people appeared on the air fortress at once? Can Dreykov not panic? A bunch of idiots. Only to find out when everyone arrives, the air fortress of the whole Red House is running like a machine. As for himself, he seemed to have a hunch, knowing that he was not a match for these people. Natasha Romanoff and Yelena were going to dive in because only they know how scary Dreykov is, but it seems that they seem to have forgotten the horror of Lorna. Lorna really wants to be ruthless. The whole air fortress is not enough for her to play. Definitely, that would definitely consume a lot of her, but even if Lorna keeps playing, it's enough to deal with these Red House guys. I saw Lorna, who was wearing a tight green battlesuit, and waved. The tightly closed iron door in front was twisted into a twist by itself. Then Lorna put her hands together to form a circle, and the iron gate turned into a ball of iron. Boom. Seeing the soldiers rushing over, Lorna pushed for a time. The small group of soldiers who rushed over all turned on their backs. It seems too simplistic. Natasha Romanoff and Yelena looked at each other and suddenly felt that they were making a big fuss. What they think is a problem, in the eyes of others, it is not a problem at all. If there are those with super ability, it is natural to push them all the way. However, this is the base of the Red House, and it is not so easy to win. The 5 of them walked directly along a road. But soon, 2 forks appeared ahead. Woo! The entire air fortress also sounded an alarm, and the red light was constantly flashing, making everyone nervous. Let's go separately. Be careful. Bai Xi saw this and said. They didn't just come here to destroy Dreykov. It is even more necessary to wipe out the Red House directly. Otherwise, just kill a Dreykov, and a new Dreykov will appear immediately. Lorna just smiled contemptuously, obviously ignoring these people. Then Susan followed Lorna as well. The 2 of them can take care of each other. As for Bai Xi, he can take care of Natasha Romanoff and Yelena by himself. Dreykov's eyelids jumped when he saw Lorna's situation. Lorna's ability is like tearing down a home in this situation. Everything here is under her control. It's like coming home. She was like a bulldozer all the way, swept straight across. Everything is under her control. Even the bullets fired by the enemy are the same. On Bai Xi's side, he soon met a team of people. They were all women, wearing black uniforms, each holding a weapon. Definitely, the most important thing is that they are all expressionless and indifferent. They are Black Widow. Yelena opened her mouth and made a warning gesture. Afterwards, Yelena looked at Bai Xi and begged, "Don't kill them. They are all pitiful people just like us." Bai Xi nodded slightly. Of course he knew. I suggest physical wake-ups, Bai Xi said. Natasha Romanoff also smiled. Then the 2 sides rushed straight up. Natasha Romanoff fell to the ground with one of his legs clamped, but was pounced on by several Black Widows. As for Yelena, the same is true. Each of them has to face several or even more than 10 enemies. The cultivation of Black Widow is cruel. Basically, they are a bunch of girls, and they fight each other by raising goo, and then the elites will survive. In the last century, that is, the Red House during World War II, will only leave the best one to become the Black Widow. But then gradually more and more. Although these Black Widows are weaker than Natasha Romanoff and Yelena. But after all, 2 fists are invincible to 4 hands. And the 2 will soon be suppressed, or even caught. Seeing this situation, Bai Xi naturally had to do it himself. A Black Widow rushed in front of him and punched him directly. Bai Xi lowered his head, then grabbed her hand and stabbed the other hand directly on her neck. The Black Widow softened instantly. Bai Xi, I'm the best at hitting women. His body shape is like a dragon, and he faints with a single knife. In just over 10 seconds, all the Black Widows were stunned by him. Natasha Romanoff and Yelena gasped, and Akimbo looked at Bai Xi with their hair in a mess as if asking, "Why are you so skilled?" Natasha Romanoff gasped and asked, "What about them? If these Black Widows are allowed to lie here, even if they have been physically released, something will inevitably happen. It's very simple. Just drag it away." Bai Xi thought for a while, then said, spreading his right hand. A simple rope suddenly appeared in his hand, which looked no different from an ordinary rope. Natasha Romanoff laughed. "You didn't mean to use this rope to take them away, did you?" Yelena said with a mindless admiration. "I believe in Uncle Bai Xi. You need a face. You look older than him. Natasha Romanoff immediately sneered. If you talk nonsense again, I will tear your mouth apart. Yelena, trembling with anger, threatened Natasha Romanoff. You can beat me only by sneak attack. When the two were bickering, they suddenly saw that the rope in Bai Xi's hand became longer and then tied all the Black Widow together. What is this? Natasha Romanoff asked with wide eyes. This is the lasso of truth. It has the power to tell the truth. Would you like to try it? Bai Xi asked Natasha Romanoff with a smile. No. Natasha Romanoff immediately refused. She doesn't dare to use it. Isn't this thing killing people? Celebrating the 7-day National Day holiday and reading books. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediately rush to recharge. Event time, October 1st to October 7th. Chapter 59. Because I'm God. The scene is spectacular. Bai Xi walked in front. Natasha Romanoff and Yelena followed closely. Because there are a lot of Black Widow dragging behind him. Maybe it was because Bai Xi's attack was too hard and these people didn't have a tendency to wake up for a while. After that, Bai Xi stopped playing and directly opened his eyes. They should have been walking along the road in a zigzag manner, but when they met the wall, Bai Xi immediately caught his eye. Then he kicked the thick steel plate away. Lorna, on the other hand, is simpler in order not to make herself look like she was playing soy sauce. Susan also used ultrasonic attacks to hit a few. Then the two people smoothly converged in the control room of the air fortress, but unfortunately, the control room was empty. Drip. Instead, there is only one thing, a countdown that keeps beating. Dreykov ran away and turned on the self-exposure device before escaping. Seeing this scene, Natasha Romanoff said immediately. As an agent, I'm all too familiar with this situation. It's okay, there's enough time. Bai Xi glanced at the time. There were still several minutes left. Lorna, clear the way. Bai Xi then arranged. Lorna didn't hesitation either, just pushed her hands in front of him. All the steel twisted up and formed a passage to the outside. The group immediately rushed forward. Bai Xi dragged more than 10 or 20 Black Widows by himself, and the speed was not slow at all. Soon, everyone came to the airfield. You can just see 2 fighter jets ready to take off and leave here. And Dreykov still had time to wave at them. The smug expression on his face looked very flat. At the moment, Dreykov was actually bleeding in his heart. The air base that was finally built, it didn't take long before it was given to a nest by others. Moreover, the self-destruction button was pressed by himself. This time, Black Widow all over the world will be useless, but Dreykov still wants to maintain his victorious attitude. This made Lorna angry and wanted to pull the plane back. But Bai Xi stopped him. Let me, Bai Xi said with a smile. Lorna put down the raised hand immediately and then saw Bai Xi let go of the mantra noose and the whole person disappeared. When he instantly appeared again, he was already in front of the fighter. The pilot who was driving the fighter jet shivered with fright. Then I saw Bai Xi's hand grabbed directly on the fighter's head. Grabbed both hands. 5 fingers directly buckled the fighter's iron armor. Then he directly tried to pick up the fighter with the power of the fighter. Bai Xi really succeeded. Before Dreykov's smile stopped, he felt his body fall forward. It was as if the plane was falling with its head down. Boom. His head touched the deck ahead, and he suddenly said angrily, "What's going on?" Then, the next second, his whole body almost fell off the chair. Luckily he had a seatbelt fastened tightly. General, the plane was picked up by him. After a while of panic, Dreykov heard someone shouting like this, and then he was speechless. Who the hell is he provoking? What are you doing to provoke him? Just when Dreykov felt desperate and annoyed, Bai Xi freed up a hand. The mantra lasso was thrown out directly by him, extending infinitely. The mantra lasso that flew upward seemed to be directly entangling a cloud. Then Bai Xi used this strength to grab the fighter with one hand and threw it back to the airfield of the air fortress. Boom. More than half of the fighter plane was directly damaged, but fortunately it did not explode. Natasha Romanoff and Yelena were stunned to see this scene. Not to mention them, even Susan and Lorna were a little scared. They know that Bai Xi is strong, but they don't know how strong it is. Every time Bai Xi was asked, he just casually said it. Now it seems this billion is a little bit stronger. It's really a bit much. They seem to see a universe through Bai Xi's fingers. Natasha Romanoff and Yelena looked at Bai Xi, who had returned to their side, and immediately didn't know what to say. The gap between the two sides is too great. They thought Bai Xi was just the uncle next door, but now it seems that Bai Xi has not been easy. Lana at the moment couldn't help it, and another fighter plane was directly controlled by her ability to fly back, and then smashed on the apron. Bai Xi threw out the mantra lasso, and Dreykov was dragged by him precisely. He held the noose of mantra, and Dreykov could only kneel on his knees and look at them. Under the noose of truth, you can only speak the truth. Bai Xi smiled and said, "Stupid guy, do you regret it?" Dreykov wanted to say no regrets, but he couldn't say it. I can only obey my heart and say, I definitely regret it. Therefore, Dreykov expressed all his inner thoughts. I regret not killing Yelena directly, and killing Natasha Romanoff directly, so you are left alone. Ha. Ha ha ha. Dreykov laughed madly. Even at this moment, the only thought in his heart was to regret that he hadn't done better. Truly a human demon. Yelena couldn't help rushing up to punch him. But the fist stopped not far from his face. Dreykov laughed at this. You can't kill me. You can't hurt me if you smell me. Dreykov's words made everyone unhappy for a while. Yes? Bai Xi sneered, grabbed Dreykov's hand directly, and then pulled hard. What? Dreykov's entire arm was removed. How did you do that? Dreykov cried out in pain. Why did his technology fail? Because I'm God. Bai Xi said in his heart. Celebrating the 7-day National Day holiday and reading books. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediately rush to recharge. Event time, October 1st to October 7th. Chapter 60 Hidden Rewards for 17 years. Tell all the secrets. Natasha Romanoff couldn't help asking. There are too many secrets in the Red House, but basically only Dreykov said. Under the action of the mantra lasso, Dreykov could only say it all. For example, how many Black Widows there are. This number is too many to imagine. And what bad things the Red House has done over the years. Naturally, this time is not enough. The countdown will end soon. There were explosions all over the air fortress, and the sky-high heat wave swept toward everyone. But at this time, they had already boarded a fighter plane, and Yelena flew away. I'm done asking. Natasha Romanoff's expression became indifferent after some questioning. Natasha Romanoff, don't kill me. Seeing this, Dreykov was finally afraid. He knew that Natasha Romanoff was trying to kill. He would never have said it. But the lasso of truth. It's hard not to tell the truth. I won't kill you. I will torture you. Natasha Romanoff said with red eyes. At the moment, Dreykov noticed a pair of eyes looking at him inside the plane. Those Black Widows under his control all woke up. They were controlled by physical cracking, and they all looked at Dreykov with indifferent eyes regardless of the pain in the back of their heads. These pairs of eyes are like a pack of wild wolves, staring closely at their prey. Dreykov finally panicked. What? Dreykov's scream suddenly came from the plane, which made Bai Xi shiver. When the plane landed, Dreykov was out of breath. The Black Widows used various cruel methods to treat Dreykov as cruel as the top 10 tortures. The dragon's mission is to be slaughtered by Dragon Slayer warriors. Dreykov finally ended his sinful life. He used the Black Widow as a tool, and flouted their human rights, and lives in the end. It was attacked by Black Widow. I just don't know if the Dragon Slayer will become a dragon. The Black Widow got off the fighters one after another. They seemed to think that Yelena was their new leader, and followed her. As for Natasha Romanoff, it's a little embarrassing. Although she is the strongest Black Widow. But maybe she was sentenced to the Red House long ago, so no one agrees with her. Yelena stood in front of Bai Xi, and looked up at the still young Bai Xi. Dreykov, who made her feel like a demon, ended his life so easily under Bai Xi. This made Yelena feel like she was dreaming. I've made a decision. She looked at Bai Xi and said. Yelena even touched Bai Xi's face very boldly. I want to lead them and prevent them from being persecuted by other people or organizations. Yelena looked back at these Black Widows and said. The Black Widows also looked at her with firm eyes. There are countless compatriots in the world who have also been persecuted by Dreykov. We must find them and unite. Yelena turned around and continued to look at Bai Xi and said. I support you. For this, Bai Xi has only this answer. No matter what decision Yelena makes, he will support it. Sorry Yelena. looked into Bai Xi's eyes and murmured, "I'm leaving again." After speaking, she directly printed Bai Xi point score at the touch of a button. "When I was young, I thought about marrying you. When I grew up," Yelena stepped back as she spoke. "Yelena, I will always be your family." Facing the bold Yelena, Bai Xi also said embarrassedly, "Lana and the others are watching. I know you are my family too." After Yelena finished speaking, she brought a group of Black Widow onto the fighter plane. They are changing places. Yelena waved her hand at Bai Xi through the plane window. From now on, she is the real Black Widow. She is the leader of the Black Widows. Lead these poor people on the right track. Rather than being someone's tool. I hope Yelena can do it. Bai Xi can only wish her well. The wing of the fighter jet spit fire downwards and then flew vertically as if it disappeared in front of the eyes in an instant. "Natasha Romanoff, how about you?" Turning his head, Bai Xi looked at Natasha Romanoff. "Yelena said what I wanted to say." Natasha Romanoff said so. She just nodded her head with red eyes. "I am an agent." She lowered her head and said, "I just want to do something for the world now, to make up for my fault." Hearing Natasha Romanoff's words, Bai Xi was also a little sad. Who doesn't feel guilty after working for an organization like the Red House? Fortunately, she still has a chance to make up for it. Makes her look not so bloody. "Go. Everything will be fine," Bai Xi said to Natasha Romanoff. Natasha Romanoff also nodded, then asked, "Will we meet again?" "Definitely. No one will ever leave again." Ding. Congratulations to the host for hiding his strength for 17 years and getting a reward. Omega rays. Before I knew it, the time came to 2010. Bai Xi also got another reward of his own. Omega rays. This is the ability of Darkseid, the monarch of Apocalypse. Omega rays look the same as heat sight, but in fact it is not pure high temperature or destruction. It contains a powerful Omega effect, which can completely obliterate people or revive them. The direction of Omega rays can be controlled at will, just like aiming. You can also use Omega rays to travel through time and space. Or you can use Omega rays to destroy the world. Only 2 people have made Omega rays ineffective against them. One is Superman, who is protected by the Wall of Origin. The second is the Batman, that the Omega rays have escaped by themselves. Definitely, there are times when Batman is thrown into the endless parallel world. Each of these parallel worlds is worse than the other. Therefore, Bai Xi is still very satisfied with this ability. It's the eyes that can't stand it. Bai Xi looked at his panel and nodded with satisfaction. Host, Bai Xi. Person, Dimension Mephisto. Physical, Demigod. Items, Symbiosis Talisman, Mantra Lasso, Fountain of Youth, Bumblebee, Elf Ball, Supreme Lord of the Rings. Ability, Batman's fighting ability, Teleportation, Advanced version, Serious Punch, Heat Vision, Time Travel, Frozen 1000 Miles, Mirror Space, Listening, Super Hearing, Omega Rays. It was at this time that Bai Xi received an invitation from Tony Stark. Celebrating the 7-day National Day holiday and reading books. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediately rush to recharge. Event time, October 1st to October 7th. Chapter 61. Which Carter can withstand such a test? Bai Xi was still very abrupt when he suddenly received a party invitation from Tony Stark. Because he hadn't seen Tony since he returned to the Lighthouse Country. According to Pepper, it was Tony who suddenly indulged. Live a life that is called essential dog. Every day is a busy person. I can't see anyone at all, and the company is left to the management of Ziochili. Bai Xi naturally knew that Tony Stark was sick, so he didn't care. Anyone who knows they are going to die, that is definitely to indulge and do what you want to do the most, which is human nature. Not to mention a rich man like Tony Stark. At that time, Bai Xi was emotional. Tony really listened to that. Eat and drink. Now it looks like it's almost over. This party was Tony's last indulgence. Lana didn't like Tony very much, so that's why Susan came with him. Susan was wearing a silver white M-shaped dress, holding Bai Xi's hand and walking very elegantly. Coming to Tony's villa, he immediately attracted the attention of many people. Many people looked at Bai Xi with envy. Going out with the best of Susan. How much of a face? Bai Xi saw Tony, who was sloppy Tony's appearance made him amused, with thick dark circles under his eyes, as if he was reluctant to sleep, but also, whoever watches his life decrease day by day, will not be able to sleep. What's more, Tony was able to see the black lines on his body and even measure the concentration of palladium poisoning on his body. Just torturing yourself, Bai, you're right, it feels great. Tony raised his glass and said. Susan voluntarily dropped her hand to hold him and then went to the side with the wine. Bai Xi put his arms around Tony's shoulders. Tony, are we good brothers? Definitely, you are my best friend. Tony sighed. He is a very strange person. Even if he has money, not many people want to be friends with him. Those who approached him were conspiratorial. So in the last days of his life, Tony wanted to meet Bai Xi. Well, tell me everything about your bank card password, so that you won't be cheap for others after you die. Bai Xi nodded with satisfaction. Tony didn't know what to complain about, or what to do for a while. Really good brother. After a while, Tony said, what if I told you, I don't remember those passwords? You can go and ask Pepper. Now, it was Bai Xi's turn to be speechless. He had forgotten about it. Tony probably remembers the number of his birthday. Oh, here comes my new secretary. Tony then said off topic. Barbara, a blonde beauty, was brought over by Tony. Bai Xi's eyes flickered when she saw her and then glanced elsewhere. Bai Xi followed him and found a figure that interested him. Her name is Barbara. Isn't she beautiful? Tony said proudly. Your eyes are really good, Bai Xi exclaimed. But no matter how beautiful it is, Tony couldn't really get it. Because she was sent by SHIELD. Mockingbird Barbara. Bai Xi also thought about it before. Natasha Romanoff was taken away by him some time ago, and he was obviously in a bad mood. Who is SHIELD going to replace to break into the History Stark group? As a result, the answer appeared. I'll go see Susan, Bai Xi said to Tony, and then ran away. It's a pity I didn't get Tony's property. After all, Tony won't really die, and he'll have to die when he develops a new energy source. Rounding it up, it's a loss of the world's richest man. Instead of looking for Susan, Bai Xi came to a woman in a long black dress. She has short black hair and looks very sassy and a little cold. Have a drink? Bai Xi said directly to her. Mariah Hill did not refuse. She knew Bai Xi. Definitely, Bai Xi doesn't know her. When she went to find Bai Xi didn't know where she was going. Cheers, the two said to each other, and then drank it. You're beautiful, and it makes me want to date you. Thanks, Mariah Hill responded with a smile. As Nick Fury said, women are his weakness. If Bai Xi knew, he would agree. Back then, when he first came to this world, he had also been sensual. However, Bai Xi's next sentence made her angry. How is Natasha Romanoff lately? Hearing Bai Xi's question, Mariah Hill smiled, but she actually gritted her teeth. Scumbag, she thought to herself. As soon as I complimented her on her beauty and wanted to date her, I asked other women in a blink of an eye. Even if Natasha Romanoff has an unusual relationship with him, it can't be like this. Proper scumbag. She's doing fine. It's like rediscovering your purpose in life, says Mariah Hill. That's good. Bai Xi nodded and said. He has been following Natasha Romanoff and Yelena. After all, when they met again, the two became his concern. Yelena had gathered most of the Black Widow after so long. They have taken on a lot of tasks, but they are no longer the Black Widow of the Red House. As Yelena said, she will lead the Black Widow to the right path. Won't you invite me to drink 2 more glasses? Mariah Hill deliberately approached Bai Xi and asked. She pretended that her eyes were a little blurry, but how could the agent drink so badly? Bai Xi's heart is also a little hot, and a woman with short hair can be so attractive. He smiled. If you do this, will Nick Fury give you a medal? What does it have to do with him? I'm just testing you, Mariah Hill said with a smile, and became serious again. Which Carter can withstand such a test? Bai Xi also said with emotion that he couldn't help but want to get started. But right now, boom, celebrating the 7-day National Day holiday and reading books. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediately rush to recharge. Event time. October 1st to October 7th. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 62 Lost the Chance to Become the Richest Man in the World. Bai Xi's hand just put his hand on Mariah Hill's waist, and before he could exert his strength, he heard the sound of bombardment coming from the side. He and Mariah immediately turned their heads to look, and Mariah Hill knocked off the hand he was about to do. It's fun now. 39 Mariah Hill tilted her head suddenly and said, I saw two men in tins appear. Tony Stark donned his red steel battlesuit and Colonel Rhodes in the war machine. Apparently, he and Tony got into an argument, and got into a fight. What? Many rich and famous ladies shouted, and ran away quickly. Rhodes is also dispersing the crowd. Susan ran to Bai Xi's side, and hugged him tightly. There was no reason just now, but now I'm not afraid. She still remembered Mariah Hill. Last time, I went to my house, to find Bai Xi dressed in fancy clothes, and now I'm dressed like this. It's heartbreaking. Let's go out too. Bai Xi felt a little embarrassed in the atmosphere, and immediately said. Both Mariah Hill and Susan nodded. Then Bai Xi directly took Mariah Hill's hand, and Susan held the other hand. Be careful at 08 o'clock. Don't get hurt by these two idiots. Bai Xi said. Mariah Hill's hands are full of calluses, in line with the identity of an agent. When they came out of the villa, everyone else patted them, and drove away quickly. As for the inside of the villa, there was already a roar. Tony and Rhodes are really fighting. It can also be seen that Tony is really unscrupulous. Tony Stark, it's really scary to die. After all, the greatest sorrow of a person is that the person dies and the money is not spent. Especially Tony was only in his 30s and 40s, the age of a flower. Is it still old and strong? Is there still a chance for 2 drinks? 39 Bai Xi asked Mariah Hill, but actually wanted to leave. Hill agent naturally saw his perfunctory. So he said, if there is a chance in the future, you can make an appointment. She forced to get Bai Xi's private number. Bai Xi did not refuse the request of a beautiful woman. It's just a number after all. By the way, I only accept personal invitations. 35 Bai Xi reminded Mariah Hill. In the atmosphere of the party before, I really felt like I wanted to wipe Mariah Hill. But when it came out, the atmosphere disappeared, and naturally it didn't feel that big. No wonder so many people are reduced to party animals. In that atmosphere, it's easy to do something. Mariah Hill put her arms around her and watched the Hornet disappear. Later, she also stepped into Barbara's car. Success. Barbara asked the deputy commissioner, Mariah Hill. Although she didn't know what Mariah's mission was. However, if there is no reason, the deputy director of Hill Agent will definitely not come in person. Come on. Mariah Hill took out the mirror and looked at her flaming red lips, revealing a smile that was unique to the hunter. Nick Fury arranged her beauty plan, and it looks like it's working pretty well. If it wasn't for Tony's sudden madness, maybe the effect will be better. One step directly to the stomach. But who is the prey? Who is the hunter? And who knows until the end? Tony was sitting outside a cafe like a dead body. He looked up at Che Wang and seemed to see nothing. His neck was covered with black spots and dark spots, and he looked like a dying man. Life is short. That's what Tony thinks. He thought of what Bai Xi said yesterday. He has no heirs, so it might be a good choice to give all his property to Bai Xi. After all, Bai Xi is his only brother. It's better than someone else's cheaper. As for Little Pepper, women are like clothes, and brothers are like siblings. I believe that Bai Xi will not embarrass Chili. Tony took out his phone and was about to call Pepper to make arrangements when Nick Fury appeared. He took Tony to the cafe where Mockingbird and Barbara showed up in agent costume. Bai Xi didn't know. At this moment, he lost the chance to become the richest man in the world. However, without new element and new energy, it is difficult to become the richest man in the world. Vibranium of Black Panther expresses disdain. You turned out to be an agent. You deceived my feelings. 39 Tony looked at Barbara angrily. His favorite secretary turned out to be agent. Then, he was violently stabbed by Barbara. Barbara also didn't like the dude who was always trying to take advantage of her. This is the hated Tony. Tony yelled, but found that the palladium poisoning on his body quickly subsided. This braised egg is prepared. Subsequently, Nick Fury used Howard Stark's feelings to successfully win over Tony. At least it makes Tony seem less hostile to SHIELD. I've got some stuff from your father there that might be of use to you. Tony looked at the braised egg that was so black that it could reflect the light and suddenly looked forward to it. Next, Tony began to happily research new element. It turns out that sometimes fighting dad really matters. Bai Xi never thought that Mariah Hill would call him so quickly. How long has it been since Tony's party? Was she so horny? Mr. Bai, we have something that will interest you. Mariah Hill's gentle voice sounded inside 483. Bai Xi immediately asked, are you a private invitation or in the name of SHIELD? Definitely my personal. Mariah Hill said without hesitation. If she dared to say that it was in the name of SHIELD, Bai Xi would definitely refuse directly. This is her sixth sense as a woman. Then, is this invitation serious? Bai Xi asked. Mariah Hill immediately laughed when she heard the words. It can be serious, it can be serious, it can even be very romantic. 99. Where to go? New Mexico. There's a hammer there. Hearing Mariah Hill's words, Bai Xi immediately agreed. Then, he informed Lorna and Susan. I have a friend who has a hammer for me to look at. Bai Xi said with a serious face. This hammer, is it serious? 55. Lorna asked suspiciously. Definitely, it can hammer people to meow. Bai Xi immediately laughed. Wonder if Lorna's ability can control Mjolnir. After Mariah Hill said it, he knew what was going on. New Mexico, hammer, Thor. He was thrown from Asgard by Odin. To be honest, Bai Xi thought Odin was kind. If he was Odin, Hela and Thor would just delete their numbers and restart. Chapter 63. No doubt, ITN-039, a hammer. Bai Xi and Mariah Hill finally chose a very romantic approach. The two rode the Hornet and set off all the way. Mariah Hill was instantly speechless. Are you sure this is romantic? Sitting in the driver's seat, Bai Xi, wearing sunglasses, turned his head and smiled. Isn't it romantic that I will take you through most of the lighthouse country? You can do it by plane, without wasting so much time. Mariah Hill was suddenly speechless. She was afraid that the daylily would be cold when she rushed over. Airplanes are not as romantic as self-drive travel. Bai Xi smiled and said, don't worry, it won't be too late. Bumblebee, hurry up. Under Mariah Hill's astonished gaze, Bumblebee replied, and then the speed exploded. As if there was a booster behind him, he almost flew up. What about the self-driving tour? Mariah Hill complained inwardly. Where's the romance? Luckily, Bai Xi put his hand on her lap by mistake when he was in gear just now. Co-author did not drive at all. It was all intentional, right? Still, Mariah Hill is more curious about bumblebees. Is this artificial intelligence? It would be easy if SHIELD could do this. Subsequently, the Hornet began to overtake wildly at high speed. In the lighthouse country, many people have poor driving skills, so they usually just follow the car. Fragments like crazy overtaking in movies generally only exist in movies. Because most people can't step on the brakes steadily, they will only step on the bottom with one foot. So following others is the best way. Definitely, it's definitely not slow either. In this case, Bai Xi and Mariah Hill traveled across several states to New Mexico within a few days. New York is on the east coast, and New Mexico is basically on the southwest. Down here is Texas, the Lone Star. Back then, this area was tricked by the lighthouse country from Mexico. Not really romantic, as Mariah Hill thought. Because basically they are in a hurry and have no time to play. It's only easier at night when the two of you are staying at the motel. In particular, motels usually only rent one room for you, and Mariah Hill must live with Bai Xi, changing clothes in front of Bai Xi or something. Apart from that, there are no benefits. Fortunately, they finally arrived in New Mexico. After coming here, Mariah Hill did not know where to change her clothes. Before, she was casually wearing a small vest and short jeans. If this outfit is seen by others in SHIELD, the capable Hill agent image will be ruined. So, Mariah Hill immediately changed into a black suit and sunglasses. At first glance, it looks a bit like Trinity in the Matrix. What about the two people's trip you agreed? Bai Xi continued to talk. You don't want Natasha Romanoff to see it. Hill agent regained apathy. Where is Natasha Romanoff? Bai Xi and Mariah Hill approached the shed that SHIELD quickly built. Seeing that it was Hill agent, the people from SHIELD didn't block it. Sure enough, Bai Xi met Natasha Romanoff here, whom he hadn't seen for a long time. Natasha Romanoff gave him a big hug and told him about the situation. Some people said that they suddenly found a hammer on the ground and then smashed a big hole. The residents here have tried countless ways to move it. Not at all, Natasha Romanoff said, and brought Bai Xi directly to the pit. The honest-faced Phil Coulson was already waiting here. That's it. Phil Coulson went on. We've tried all kinds of methods and can't shake it or even know where it came from. 35 Phil Coulson said he went up and pulled it twice. Of course it doesn't work. Bai Xi crouched down and looked at Mjolnir on the ground. It looks like an ordinary hammer. Even the shape is ordinary. But it's actually not that simple. The whole body is made of ulute steel. The inside of the hammerhead is forged from a decayed fixed star core, and a ring-shaped special material belt is placed at the end of the hammer handle. It has a very high magic affinity, and because of the core, the weight distribution is very particular, and the strike is extremely strong. The handle of the hammer is made from the branches of the world tree. Why Thor is obviously a fool, but he has an affinity for magic. Because this hammer wasn't made for Thor, but for Hela Odinson, goddess of death. When Hela and Odin fought together in the Nine Realms, they used Mjolnir. Her night sky sword was thrown away for a while. It was only later that Odin suppressed Hela and transformed Mjolnir became what it is now. Mr. Bai, do you know what it is? Phil Coulson asked. Without a doubt, a hammer, Bai Xi said. Mariah Hill pushed Phil Coulson away, then bent down too. What about its origin? Looking at Mariah Hill, who was almost close to her face, Bai Xi said, if you laugh, I'll tell you. Mariah Hill at the moment looked indifferent, as if she had become the Hill agent again. This made Bai Xi want to play tricks. It is a pity that there is no flaming red lips. Bai Xi misses Mariah Hill wearing a dress and heavy makeup time. Mariah Hill was a little embarrassed, but nothing changed on the surface. She gave a cold grin. Are you satisfied? Bai Xi seemed to hear her endless anger. Natasha Romanoff was hugging and watching the good show in front of her. Look away. Back then, neither she nor Yelena knew Bai Xi's true face. If Bai Xi knew his image was ruined in Natasha Romanoff's heart, probably have to regret it. Please, this is Mjolnir 99, Bai Xi said, and did not tease the Hill agent anymore. A bit familiar, Mariah Hill said with blurred eyes. She was thinking about her memory, but the heat from her awe was all on Bai Xi's face. This is Thor's weapon in Norse mythology. Akam Mjolnir 35. Bai Xi looked at her face and said. Everyone heard the words, as if Thor had stopped breathing. It seems like it can't be accepted. Natasha Romanoff took a moment to ask, Thor? Is there really a god in this world? In the eyes of Natasha Romanoff, the strength that Bai Xi showed at the beginning can already be called a god. But she didn't know that the myths were all true. Definitely. Then why is it here? 95. Because Thor is here. Hearing Natasha Romanoff's words, Bai Xi said. For a time, everyone in SHIELD fell into an eerie silence. Chapter 64. Thor and Loki, brother-in-law. At night, it rained heavily. There was lightning and thunder outside, as if inspired by something. The endless mad thunder in the cloud and mist seemed to wipe out the world. But in this case, there is still a figure desperately rushed into the temporary base of SHIELD. He pushed away several agents, but was quickly caught by the agents who rushed up, making it difficult to escape. 66.99. Mariah Hill looked at the screen and said, this is Thor. 5. It doesn't look any different from a mortal. Natasha Romanoff also laughed. From this point of view, I even feel that he is a bit reckless. He didn't think he could rush into SHIELD's temporary base while it was dark and rainy. He was stripped of his divine powers by the god King Odin, and now he is just an ordinary person. Bai Xi is not surprised. Odin's two children are simply wonderful. If there's one thing in common, it's that Hela and Thor are war freaks. However, Hela's ambitions are clearly bigger than Thor's. Hela conquered the 9 realms and wants to conquer the universe. And Thor just wanted to fight. Hela is like a true tyrant and conqueror. Thor is 500 little children. The difference between the two is too great. But one thing to say, it's all weird. Thor was restrained at will. Fortunately, the honest man Phil Coulson appeared in time, and he motioned to the SHIELD agent to release Thor. Thor didn't care about this either, and rushed directly to his hammer. Then, puff. Everyone laughed when they saw Thor who couldn't hold a hammer. It was so hilarious, like Thor was doing a comedy. However, the joys and sorrows of human beings are not the same, and perhaps Thor is a god. In short, he sat on the ground and cried a lot under the heavy rain. God King Odin, his father, actually abandoned him. Thor couldn't accept that. And for those watching this scene, he's like a baby 35. Natasha Romanoff laughs. This is definitely not a good word. Like a baby abandoned by its parents. 35. Mariah Hill also shook her head in disappointment. This farce is over. The so-called Thor. Is that so? If this is not what Bai Xi said, they will all wonder if this is a joke that the monkey invited. Afterwards, AF, Thor did not resist and let the agent of SHIELD drag him away in desperation. Bai Xi glanced at the hammer. The magic that Odin casts is actually very strict, but there are loopholes. That is, what qualifications do you have to lift it? This sentence can be interpreted casually by Odin. After all, it was the magic spell he cast. Otherwise, Bai Xi wouldn't believe that Thor, who just suffered a blow, was qualified all of a sudden. Odin still couldn't take it easy. So Bai Xi also thinks this is a farce from Odin. I'll go see him, Bai Xi said with a smile. Why are you laughing? Mariah Hill wondered. Nothing, I suddenly thought of something fun. Bai Xi waved his hand. Natasha Romanoff patted Mariah Hill and said, never mind, he's been so rude. 35. 66.99 still need you to say. Mariah Hill felt as if a handprint on her leg was hot, touched along the way. When Bai Xi pushed the door and came in, Thor was yelling into the air, looking like he was out of control, because Loki told him that Odin was dead. Thor didn't think about it carefully and immediately believed it. With Odin's strength alone, if Loki really wanted to kill him, he would probably be killed as soon as he had the idea. Are you talking to Loki, little dude? Bai Xi said this to Thor. Out of control. Thor suddenly sat down. He and Loki, who was just a duplication, both looked at Bai Xi in surprise. You ask who he is? Loki said to Thor. Thor immediately asked, who are you? I'm your brother-in-law. 35. Bai Xi suddenly sat upright. That's right. Hela, this madman, has been conquered by him. Isn't that a veritable brother-in-law? It's just that Bai Xi doesn't know now that Hela hates him again. Thor and Loki instantly had to black question marks. I'm Thor, the glory of the northern god. How dare you take advantage of me? Tolton said immediately. But Bai Xi just looked at them so coldly. Come on, Loki, I know where you are. 99. Bai Xi said. Loki's voice suddenly sounded. How is it possible? You are just a mortal. How can you see through the magic of the first magician in the 9 realms? The number 1 magician in the 9 realms? You deserve it too. Bai Xi immediately smiled and said, the number 1 magician in the 9 realms is Loki, but it's definitely not your Loki. Loki was stunned again. Riddler? Bai Xi is right. The old Loki used magic to recreate Asgard, which is definitely not something that the little Loki in front of him can do. But even so, it really can't be called the number 1 magician in the 9 realms. It's just the emotion of everyone. Because the 9 realms have Sorcerer Supreme. The Sorcerer Supreme is not the Sorcerer Supreme of the Earth, but the Sorcerer Supreme of the universe. Wait, just think about it. But out of curiosity about Bai Xi, Loki appeared. Now you can say it. If you say it to my dissatisfaction, be careful of your life. Loki opened his mouth to threaten him. This is Loki's usual trick. Bai Xi looked at the two brothers with pity. You are so pitiful. Odin didn't tell you anything. What exactly do you know? This time, Thor finally couldn't bear it anymore. I said, I'm your brother-in-law. I'll tell you when I call you brother-in-law, Bai Xi said while holding his hands. Loki and Tolton looked at each other for a moment. Damn, we don't have a sister, the two said in unison. At the same time, Loki directly attacked Bai Xi with a small dagger. He wants to play close combat with Bai Xi. He's obviously a magician, but he likes to play melee combat. Just as unprofessional as Ancient One. So, Bai Xi reached out and grabbed Loki's hand, making him unable to move. So I said, you don't know anything. Loki, your life and death throne is always someone else's. Thor, when your sister comes out, Asgard will change 55, Bai Xi said with a smile. Afterwards, Loki was thrown out directly by him. Although it was a duplication, Loki also felt humiliated. For a while, I just wanted to bury my head in the ground. Thor dragged Loki straight off the ground. Then he bullied Loki with his eyes. Loki had no choice but to follow Thor and shout to Bai Xi under Thor's coercion. Brother-in-law. Chapter 65. Squeeze Mjolnir with one hand. The famous scene is ahead of schedule. After the two shouted these two words, they were immediately ashamed. But there was no way, the two were just too curious. Suddenly a stranger ran out and said he was your brother-in-law, but you don't have a sister. You won't believe it, you're going to beat him up. But if you find that you can't beat him, you will doubt whether what he said is true. Because this is a legend. What good is he lying to me? Loki didn't want to do this at first, but helpless, Thor believed it. Thor, he really believed it. Only now did Loki feel that it wasn't how smart he was, but how stupid Thor was. That's why he always plays Thor all over the place. Loki looked at the liar to see what he had to say. Bai Xi smiled and said, why do you think Asgard rules the 9 realms? It's the 9 realms where your sister and Odin fought together, but Odin betrayed her after she succeeded. Impossible. Thor straight raw impossible. Asgard, that's Odin modifying it all, whitewashing the piece. Bai Xi looked at him speechlessly. Loki then shook his head in disbelief. How is this possible? 35. If there is such a person, how could Asgard be forgotten? Loki's logic is clearer. Odin is the king of gods. Isn't it easy to erase a person's trace? Bai Xi said, Loki, your real body should be in the golden hall now. You can see the truth behind the mural. More and more exciting. Bai Xi didn't want to say it at first, but he couldn't bear the idea of spoilers. No wonder Sorcerer Supreme is so hard to be. How uncomfortable is Ancient One. But at the moment, Bai Xi just feels so cool. What kind of garbage time mutation bureau? Some kind of come to catch him. As for now, Bai Xi doesn't know what will happen in the future. Loki immediately stopped when he heard the duplication. Although he couldn't believe it, he still wanted to try it. Maybe it's true. Loki, who was sitting on the throne, suddenly raised his head and looked at the frescoes above the golden hall. He waved the spear of eternity in his hand. Before Odin used it to threaten Hela, but now it has temporarily become Loki's toy. Loki, eyes widened for a moment. Nothing happened. Because God King Odin appeared in front of him. Odin, who had forcibly recovered from Odin's sleep, seemed exhausted. But the only eye he had left was staring angrily at Loki. What are you doing? Loki? Loki was silent for a moment. He swore that he had never seen Odin look so rage in his life. Even if he cut Sif's hair as a child, Sif came to Odin to complain. Even if he stabbed his brother Thor's kidney when he was a child. Even if he... Anyway, Loki had never seen Odin so angry. He knew he was in trouble. Loki, what's the truth? Say it. Thor pushed Loki duplication, whose expression was suddenly dull. But the next second Loki's duplication suddenly collapsed and disappeared. Thor was dumbfounded. Bai Xi seemed to feel it. A pair of eyes, oh no, one eye seemed to be staring at him in the void. It seems that you can't take your hammer away, Bai Xi said with a chuckle. Odin could already feel the breath in him, knowing that Bai Xi is the guy who stole the dimension. Thor continued to be confused, but he still asked, is everything you say true? 99 definitely. Then my sister, what's her name? 99. Thor didn't notice the difference and continued to ask. Bai Xi looked at the sky, although it was only the ceiling of the room. Odin seemed to be getting more and more angry. Goddess of death, Hela. 35. Boom. After Bai Xi said this sentence, Mjolnir flew directly towards Bai Xi. The hammerhead pointed at him, as if to hammer him to death. Bai Xi stretched out his hand directly and grabbed Mjolnir with one hand. The base of SHIELD collapsed in an instant. Disgraced Mariah Hill and Natasha Romanoff and others all ran over. Bewilderedly looked at Bai Xi and Thor in the field. At the moment, Bai Xi was holding a hammer in his hand. Lightning flashes on Mjolnir. It proves that everything Bai Xi said is true. The hand in front of me is Thor, and the hammer is Mjolnir. What happened? Mariah Hill asked suddenly. How could this sudden change happen? A little misunderstanding. Bai Xi said with a sneer. Then push hard. The endless breath of death poured out from the dimensional mark on his hand. Bai Xi draws on the power of dimensions for a moment. Crack. Tiny cracks appeared on Mjolnir, which then gradually spread. 0.4 flowers boom. As the gap spreads around, Mjolnir was crushed directly by Bai Xi. Hela's famous scene was completed first by Bai Xi. Squeeze Mjolnir with one hand. You really can't take Mjolnir now. 35 Bai Xi said lightly. My hammer. After realizing it, Thor suddenly let out a whimper. Waste, are you the god of hammers? Bai Xi felt that he was very noisy and patted Thor on the head directly. Thor was instantly stunned. I have never been beaten like this since I was a child. But he also felt that what Bai Xi said made sense. He is Thor, not the god of hammers. And Odin was also incensed. The sky that had just cleared became cloudy again. .00 endless thunder began to surge. As if to help Bai Xi save the thunder. What? Dare to open Bifrost and come down and play a dozen? 35 Bai Xi looked up at the sky with a sneer. Then, Odin softened. The dark clouds gradually dispersed and the thunderlight disappeared. When the angry Odin came to his senses, he looked at the well-behaved Loki in front of him. Hit it directly with a spear. Boom. Loki's figure instantly turned into a phantom, and his real body had unknowingly escaped. Even escaped Asgard. It's a little trick like that. Odin said angrily. Why are your own children trash? Thor still looked sadly at the broken hammer. Mjolnir has been with him for 1,000 years, so broken. Now he is afraid and hates Bai Xi. But, the emotions are a little more complicated. Thor's Earth's girlfriend rushed up and hugged him. Thor became even more sad, and it was still the hammer who was sad. What is a woman compared to a hammer? Mariah Hill came to Bai Xi's side. What should we do now? She, the deputy director of SHIELD, is a little overwhelmed. Go home. Bai Xi said. The people at SHIELD were suddenly busy trying to cover up everything. You seem to be making things worse. Just hope this time the movement won't be too big. But just thinking about it, a gate of light appeared behind Bai Xi. Billion. Chapter 66 Time Variation Bureau. They dare not. The busy SHIELD people and Thor and the others seemed to be unable to see the slight gate. Bai Xi turned around and looked at it all. Time Variation Bureau? He thought to himself, but a bald head emerged from the door of light. Sorcerer Supreme, Ancient One. Why you? Bai Xi suddenly said in surprise. Ancient One smiled. Otherwise who do you think it is? Time Variation Bureau. Bai Xi said casually. He felt that the Ancient One should not know. But, the Ancient One is more powerful than he imagined. They dare not. Ancient One spoke. Don't dare? Bai Xi was stunned for a moment, and then thought about it. It was indeed very possible. The Ancient One was clearly aware of this so-called Time Variation Bureau. This proves her strength. Sorcerer Supreme is the Sorcerer Supreme of the universe. Can the so-called 500 line in sacred time be able to manage the Ancient One? Now think about it. Why are all Loki caught in the Time Variation Bureau? The so-called god of tricks is indeed easy to make trouble. But Ancient One and Strange, who can see countless timelines, can't help but change the timeline. The existence of Odin and Thanos will not suddenly change their minds. Then why only catch Loki? The answer is actually pretty obvious. The civil servants of the Time Variation Bureau of a group of ordinary people did not dare to arrest the boss. Do children want to beat adults with knives? It's you. Can you stop changing the timeline at will? Ancient One looked at Bai Xi helplessly and said. Everything she originally set up was almost changed by Bai Xi beyond recognition. Those who play with time will eventually be played with by time. Ancient One speaks his theory. What does the future look like? Bai Xi asked Ancient One. She has a time gem and can see the future. However, Ancient One just smiled inscrutably. Time has its modifier ability, so it just hasn't changed much. Bai Xi understood instantly. Seeing his expression, Ancient One immediately said, stop messing around. Ancient One was afraid of Bai Xi and left immediately after speaking. She has seen many people who are not afraid of heaven and earth. But Bai Xi is special because he is not in the timeline. In any timeline, there is no him, and there is no other him in the parallel universe. This existence is very tricky. Even Bai Xi doesn't use the power of Dimension Mephisto. She can't find Bai Xi. Ancient One, I'm so scared. I just want to retire in peace and wait for Strange to take over. So, Ancient One decided that as long as Bai Xi wasn't destroying the world or something, he didn't want to care too much. Can't you take him without watching Odin? Although, Odin just forcibly woke up from Odin's sleep, and his state is very poor. Odin performs regular sleep of Odin every year. Otherwise, the huge power of Odin in his body will cause him to become disordered, and his strength will decline. Too much energy is too powerful, not exactly a good thing. This also shows how strong Odin is, if he is really angry. Who are you talking to? 35 Natasha Romanoff leaned in and asked. As a high-level agent, she naturally doesn't have to follow others to clean up. She can even eat lollipops at leisure. A bald strong man 99 Bai Xi said. What's the connection between the bald head and the strong? 35 Natasha Romanoff asked. Anyway, if you see a bald head in the future, avoid it. Bai Xi didn't answer. When you become bald, you become stronger. This is the truth. He was afraid that Natasha Romanoff would suddenly go and shave herself. Natasha Romanoff didn't know what to do and just held out the lollipop. Eat? Looking at the original lollipop, Bai Xi refused. Durant must be envious, right? After all, you can't drink the bath water. The sky is slightly bright. SHIELD finally buried the traces. At this moment, a rainbow light suddenly emerged from the sky. Bifrost. The people at SHIELD were suddenly nervous. Mariah Hill has made up for Norse mythology and naturally knows what Bifrost is. When Bifrost disappeared, only a few people remained on the ground. The 3 warriors of Asgard, plus the goddess Sif. Sif looked bitter and hated. They came to find Thor. Odin thought Thor would soon be calling Heimdall. As a result, the night passed, and Thor seemed reluctant to think about Asgard. Thor, the king of God has called you back. Sif frowned and said to Thor, am I not banished? Tolton was stunned. He still remembered what Odin had said to him at the time. 66.99 Sif remembered what Odin said 0. So he said, Midgard is too dangerous. Thor suddenly looked at his brother-in-law. It looks like he really has a sister. Goddess of death. Hela. Thor refrained from speaking, but prepared to follow Sif and the others back to Asgard to question Odin. Bai Xi just took a look and left. At first I thought Odin was trying to fight a fight, but now it looks like Odin is really old. Odin has lost his temper to fight others. If it was Odin who conquered the 9 realms with Hela back then, he would have come to Bai Xi with the Spear of Eternity. Now Odin just wants to be a benevolent king, not a tyrant. Bumblebee was directly arranged by him for consignment. He didn't want to cross several states anymore. Even with the Bumblebee's speed, it's still a bit torturous. So I directly rubbed SHIELD''S flight device. Natasha Romanoff's driving technique is solid as an old driver. Such a small aircraft did not experience any turbulence in the air. Back in New York, Bai Xi immediately received a call from Tony. Brother, have you seen the stock of She-Stark Group? Tony said excitedly. During this time, he also went through a lot. New Element were researched. Then also encountered the conspiracy of the Hanmo Group. Although Justin Hammer just wanted to play fair with him, he didn't think about killing Tor 4.5 NI. But he couldn't control Ivan, so he ended up in prison. Definitely, with the strength of the Hanmo Group, he can come out of it very quickly. Tony has gone through a lot, and his personality has changed slightly, but he is still very proud of his achievements. New energy. Stark Group stock is about to take off. Definitely saw it. You were beaten badly. Bai Xi responded immediately. Anyway, we are still good friends. Tony said helplessly. By the way, I wanted to tell you that I declined the invitation of that braised egg. Why? Bai Xi definitely knew, but asked anyway. Sometimes, Tony Stark has to be put on a bit. Otherwise he will be uncomfortable. Because he is too poor to invite the richest man in the world. Tony said very tsundere. Chapter 67 Tony, Iron-039, Vaccine Bai Xi as a scumbag. The pieces of Mjolnir are all laid out on the table. The God King Odin sat high on the throne, with one eye fixed on the wandering Thor. This made Odin a little pissed. How did you get such a jerk? If he was young, he would just delete the account and reopen it. But now, the trumpet practice is useless, and must continue to practice. No time to delete and reopen. Thor, are you really the god of hammers? Odin yelled at Thor. Thor finally came to his senses. Thor shook his head immediately. He was reluctant to admit that he was the god of hammers. He was Thor. But, without Mjolnir, he didn't even have any supernatural powers. Did his power of the thunder and lightning come with Mjolnir? His previous experiences made him doubt his life. Then, he saw Odin raise his hand, and the fragments of Mjolnir gradually solidified in his hand. It didn't take long for it to become the familiar meow meow hammer again. This hammer has shattered more than once, but it has held up. Thor, you lack that quality, Odin said to Thor. In his opinion, Thor is now a fool. Thor didn't have the quality he wanted to see. Who would have thought? Tolton asked back, is it Hela? Father, goddess of death? Hearing Odin's words, Thor remembered what Bai Xi said. Mjolnir existed before he was born. Who is that for? Damn. Odin hit Thor with a hammer. Thor was smashed and slid some distance on the ground of the Golden Hall. Odin can't wait to fight Bai Xi for 300 rounds, but Odin was afraid. He was afraid that this was Bai Xi's conspiracy just to deal with him with Hela. You just listened to a mortal's words, and you came to question me, Odin said, full of hatred. That iron is not steel. Then why are you so angry? It's all true. I have a sister. Why? Thor struggled to get up from the ground and asked. He was somewhat unable to accept this answer. If Hela has been around since he was born, then of course there is no problem. But after living for so long, he suddenly told him one day that he had a sister whom he hadn't seen for many years. Thor couldn't accept it. Madness. Odin said angrily, I just want to prevent you from being like her, and I want to make you a qualified king, so I will be so strict with you. What's it like? Thor also yelled at Odin. It wasn't more than once anyway. He was banished to Earth by Odin before, because he yelled at Odin and did not repent. What a fool you are, Thor. Odin blows his beard in anger. You want to see what she looks like? Then I'll satisfy you. Odin looked at Thor with one eye, staring at him. In this case, Thor did not hold back. Such is his character. If he chose to retreat, he would not be Thor. Odin finally couldn't take it anymore. Go with your hammer. Mjolnir smashed at Thor again, and Thor, along with Mjolnir, was teleported away directly by Odin. The goddess Frigga stepped aside and looked at Odin and shook his head. Why should it be so? He's so stupid. You're used to it, Odin said to Frigga. He is still a child and will grow up in the future. Frigga didn't care. As a member of the Warner Protoss, she has great strength. Her manner gives her the occasional glimpse into the future. This is why Frigga has no idea of changing after knowing the future, because she has already seen it. A powerful magician can see through time. The same goes for Odin. The Odin SEN family all have powerful magical abilities, except for Thor. The future has changed. 35, Odin said. Nick Fury sat in a chair, listening to Marahil's report. He just crushed Mjolnir? Nick Fury asked. Marahil nodded calmly. That's right. 35, are you sure that's not a toy hammer? Nick Fury complained instantly. He, who has made up for Norse mythology, knows that the core of Mjolnir is made of mysterious metal. Can this be crushed too? Marahil just looked at him calmly. SHIELD had already tested Mjolnir thoroughly before she arrived. Make sure it's a mystery item. Moreover, SHIELD naturally used various methods, but they were unable to get the hammer up, which explained the problem. This is not something mortals can pick up. Alright. Nick Fury accepts reality. Then how strong is Bai Xi? He suddenly smiled dryly. Marahil pondered. It seems that Thor should not be his opponent. Even the hammer was easily crushed by Bai Xi. What else is there to say? In their opinion, this Thor is really weak. For some reason, Marahil swelled. It's because Thor didn't show his power at all. Instead he looked like a baby. I thought he was just an ordinary person at first, but then I found out that he was a super ability person and thought he was nothing like Dr. Banner. It now appears that his mystery is beyond our imagination. Nick Fury has no idea how strong is Bai Xi. Can you beat Captain Marvel? I have to say that Captain Marvel is now the ceiling of combat power he has ever seen. Tony Stark is a far cry from that. tear up the spaceship with her bare hands, and the Kree fleet was scared away by her alone. Is there anything more exaggerated than this? He shouldn't be Carol's opponent, so I still have a whole card. Thinking of this, Nick Fury calmed down. Although Bai Xi is very strong, he is definitely not Carol's opponent. Definitely not. Self-hypnotic ability for a while, Nick Fury looked up at Mariah Hill. Now it seems that he still has a good impression of you. It's up to you, Hill agent. Mariah Hill blushed. Didn't this make her sell herself? Although she is an agent, she has never done such a thing. It's critical to our next plans, Nick Fury emphasized. I know. Mariah Hill closed her eyes and nodded. She doesn't hate Bai Xi. It just feels like he doesn't seem to be any different from Playboy Tony. No wonder he became friends with Tony. It's just that he's not as bad as Tony. Tony is one of those who don't acknowledge the bill the next day. But at least Bai Xi still accepted the account. Is this the so-called group of things, and people are divided into groups? Tony, yes, I have long seen the quality of Bai Xi's scumbag. Chapter 68 Hela, how can you have a brother-in-law? In the dimensional space, Hela, who was silently grinding the night sky sword, suddenly raised her head. She was fantasizing about killing Odin with one sword, and then killing Bai Xi, the scumbag. But at this moment, someone interrupted her fantasy. An idiot hit the ground directly, still facing the ground. Hela couldn't ignore the movement he made. Another idiot came in. Hela said murderously. As soon as the sword was sharpened, someone came to die. Thor looked up from the ground and saw a pair of long legs in front of him. Who are you? Thor said in a daze. I? Hela sneered suddenly. I should ask, which idiot are you? Looking at Mjolnir by Thor's hand, Hela understood. So she was even more angry. What does Bai Xi mean by sending him in? Provoking her goddess of death Hela? Thor immediately got up from the ground, held up the hammer and said, I'm Thor, the glory of the northern god. You are my sister? Thor seemed to look at Hela with some understanding. Odin really sent him to meet the goddess of death. Can't think of the next second. Hela directly stabbed Thor's heart with a sword. I don't have a stupid brother like you 39 Hela whispered in his ear. Thor's body fell directly, and his consciousness began to sag. He just died like this. But just after he felt that he was dead, he suddenly revived from a distance. How is this going? Before Thor could figure it out, he saw Hela walking towards him again, looking at him, as if he had seen prey. Thor wanted to continue speaking, but Hela came up with another sword. This speed, too fast. Thor was completely unresponsive. He didn't have time to react when Hela killed him. Why are you so strong? Thor, who was resurrected in the distance, asked while holding his heart. The feeling of death was so real that he felt that he was really dead. Idiot. Hela stopped. Didn't Odin tell you who brought down the 9 realms? Hela looked at him with invincible eyes and said domineeringly. After that, Thor was killed by her again. Stupid fellow, are you the only one worthy of the glory of the northern god? Hela is getting more and more angry. What rubbish did Odin give birth to? With such a stupid appearance, he deserves the throne of Asgard. Locked her up for thousands of years, and ended up raising this? Thor is resurrected again. You are beyond reason 55. No wonder your father will imprison you 55. Thor exclaimed. I can't beat it, but I can't say it. Then, the end can be known. Odin, this old man, is no longer worthy of being my father. Hela said resentfully, killing Thor again. And Thor is also more and more angry in his heart. Although he also thinks Odin is an old stubborn. But what he said, no one else could. In addition, Hela's remarks of idiot and waste echoed in Thor's ears again and again. Thor couldn't take it anymore. Shut up. Thor threw Mjolnir out of his hand. Odin has broken his seal. Just wanted Thor and Hela to touch. It is estimated that Odin did not expect it to be a one-sided massacre, right? Hela, who has been sealed for so long, has weakened infinitely, and the longer she leaves Asgard, the weaker her strength will be. However, Hela still hangs Thor. Odin can't even dream of it. However, Mjolnir flew straight out and was pinched by Hela with one hand. Thor felt a little uncomfortable seeing this scene. Why do you feel a little familiar? Do not. Thor yelled. But to no avail. Hela exerted a little force, and the hammer cracked again. Boom. The hammer shattered again. Thor looked at the hammer and was speechless. Why can anyone crush his hammer? Thor couldn't even dream. But without the hammer, he couldn't resist Hela if he wanted to. As Odin said, he is the god of hammers. So, after being killed again and again, looking at Hela who seemed to be rushing up tirelessly, Thor immediately blurted out, "Wait, don't kill. My brother-in-law asked me to come." Hela's night sky sword stopped in the air. "How can you have a brother-in-law?" 35 Hela asked suspiciously, not seeming to respond. "Bai Xi, his name is Bai Xi." Thor was overjoyed and finally found a normal way to communicate with Hela. But right now, laugh. The night sky sword pierced into him again. "Idiot, I want to kill him," Hela said angrily. She seemed to think of Thor as a punching bag, a combination of Odin and Bai Xi, and she didn't know how many times she had to kill him to relieve her hatred. Thor, people in Bai Xi on Earth, shuddered when they saw this scene. This Hela is so terrifying to be violent. I'm afraid of irritability. Who would dare to let her out? No wonder Odin wanted to lock her up. Keep it closed. As for Thor, Bai Xi didn't care. Let him accept his sister's experience well. Let him know what it takes to become the king of Asgard. At the same time, it can also let Hela calm down. Killing two birds with one stone is really good. Then Bai Xi unknowingly discovered. Backquoting. The reminder in his mind told him that he had another gift bag to receive. Congratulations to the host, who has achieved 18 years of hidden strength and received a reward. Dimensional teleportation. Incredible person. Dimensional teleportation. From an incredible person, as long as the host's strength is strong enough, he can traverse the dimensional world at will. Remember, it is arbitrary. Bai Xi looked at the reward and immediately stood up from the sofa. Dimensional teleportation is not a big skill, but it comes from incredible people. Incredible people can become any person or anything, the same strength. And this dimension teleports. Incredible people once used this ability to go to the next door and brought Superman here. Bai Xi looked at his panel. Host, Bai Xi. Person, Dimension Mephisto. Physical, Demigod. Items, Symbiosis Talisman, Mantra Lasso, Fountain of Youth, Bumblebee, Elf Ball, Supreme Lord of the Rings Exhausted, Ability, Batman's Fighting Ability, Teleportation, Advanced Version, Serious Punch, Hot Sight, Time Travel, Frozen 1000 Miles, Mirror Space, Listening, Super Hearing, Omega Rays, Dimension Teleportation, Incredible Person. There is one more ability, and he also really wants to try this ability. So he talked to Lorna and Susan. The two were bored watching beauty videos online to learn how to make up, and they didn't care about Bai Xi at all. Just waved at him. Bai Xi didn't understand a woman's love for beauty, so she used dimensional teleportation to disappear in an instant. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 69 Become the Real King. The Dark Dimension. On a meteor that is not known how far away from the Nine Realms, Loki was following a man in a cloak. "Who are you?" Loki asked. "Or, what race are you?" "I'm the chief of Chitauri, and my master wants to see you." Chief Chitauri said. "Chitauri?" Loki froze for a moment. "This race, isn't it a bunch of rookies? Being bullied in the universe." Although Asgard has no idea of conquering the universe, he is also famous in the universe. As the Prince of Asgard, Loki naturally knows a lot. Like how weak this Chitauri is. Still, Loki agreed. He escaped from Asgard and escaped unscathed. Odin's angry look seems to verify that what Bai Xi said is the truth. This made Loki dare not go back to Asgard, for fear of being stabbed to death by Odin. Can only wait for Odin to calm down. He didn't even know how much he didn't know. So, the homeless Loki promised Chitauri to meet his master. But Loki is naturally superior to Chitauri. After all, he was also the Prince of Asgard. Then, he saw the leader of Chitauri turn a black stone, and then fell to one knee directly on the ground. "Owner." Loki looked up, and saw a floating throne in midair with a purple-skinned guy sitting on it. "Titans, Thanos. You are his master?" Loki asked with narrowed eyes. The Titans and his dark cult are notorious in the universe, and Asgard has heard of it. Purple sweet potato essence. Thanos did not respond positively to Loki. He just leans forward a little, rests his left elbow on his thigh, and looks at Loki with his head on his fist. He asked slowly and flatly, "Loki, do you want to be the real king?" Arctic. A search team found a crashed plane in ice. The people from SHIELD immediately sent people to investigate. In this kind of place, the snow is more than a few hundred meters deep, and it is very likely that many things are buried. But not until the time generally will not be found. And this time, SHIELD was lucky to find a plane. And it looks like it's from WWII. It's been over 500 years. Did WWII plane crash in the North Pole? Just thinking about it, Nick Fury felt a little heartbeat. And SHIELD''S exploration team gradually entered the plane, cut a hole directly, and then break open. They were cautious, afraid of something terrifying in the plane. After all, the people of the Lighthouse Country have great brains. Who knows if some alien monsters will show up, then jump in and eat them all. So cautious, until they found a star and stripe shield inside the plane. Soon, they found another frozen person. Captain the United States, Steve Rogers. Endless darkness enveloped this dimension, as if there was no time, no air, and no sound. But within this, there is a continent floating. The inhabitants of this continent call Raw the Dark World, or the Dark Dimension. Bai Xi stood on a black boulder, and when he looked around, there was almost no light, and it was full of darkness. But fortunately, it didn't make him lose his sight. Even if the world is black, he can still see the surroundings clearly. At first Bai Xi thought that he was in the world where the Dark Elves lived, but it was in the Nine Realms, so Bai Xi knew that he was wrong. After a little thought, he knew where he had come. It came to Dormammu's territory. Is this a sheep in a tiger's mouth? But luckily, Dormammu doesn't seem to find him. This allows Bai Xi to explore the world. After all, he just wanted to try this dimensional teleportation. Can he go to the DC world next door or something? But now it seems that he thinks too much. Fortunately, he can go back anytime. But Bai Xi is still curious about the dark world. At first he thought there was nothing but Dormammu. But he soon discovered that there are residents here, and there are traces of life. For example, the witch in front of him. Bai Xi looked at the witch in front of him. "My name is Oma, honorable guest." The witch looks graceful and luxurious, about 30 or 40 years old. But in fact, the real age is no longer known. Because she is a witch. Bai Xi, Dimension Mephisto. Bai Xi opened his mouth to introduce himself. "Welcome to the Dark Dimension," Oma said. "But I think you've got to get out of here now, or my brother will find you." And he's facing off against the Sorcerer Supreme right now. 5. Hearing Oma's words, Bai Xi narrowed his eyes. "Who is your brother?" When Oma heard this, he immediately smiled. "His name is Dormammu." After Oma finished speaking, there was a sudden energy fluctuation behind Bai Xi. The manic energy directly annihilated his position. Bai Xi's figure flashed in the distance, looking at Dormammu, and then at Oma. Oma was human, but Dormammu was completely the energy body of the dimensional Mephisto. You call this brother and sister? But actually, there is a reason for this. Dormammu, who was once a necromancer, discovered the Dark Dimension by accident, and successfully controlled the Dark Dimension, and became its master. For great power, Dormammu gave up the human body, and became what he is now. But Alma didn't. Alma was Dormammu's sister, and followed him into the Dark Dimension, and ruled the original inhabitants of the Dark Dimension. Like Dormammu, she is a member of the Falcon race, and has not given up the human body. But even in human form, her physical attributes are superior to those of a normal human, and she is immune to the aging process. Oma, you are colluding with outsiders again, trying to get the flame of my power. Dormammu is covered in magical flames, some of which are flames of power. When he is deposed as ruler, the flame of power will appear on Alma. Dormammu's voice was as hoarse and dry, as if he hadn't spoken for countless years. It sounds like heavy metal, which is very uncomfortable. Whatever you think, you idiot. 35. Oma spoke directly, and then she stood aside. Although it was only a brief conversation, even an idiot could feel the incompatibility between the two. although they are siblings, but Oma's ambitions are also great, and he has always wanted to truly rule the dark dimension. Just like Dormammu, become the master of the dark dimension, and become the dimension Mephisto. At the moment, Dormammu has set his sights on Bai Xi. Which dimension of Mephisto are you? Dormammu, who had just finished a fight with Ancient One, didn't seem to have much patience. His eyes full of flame stared at Bai Xi. If it wasn't for the breath of dimensional Mephisto on Bai Xi, he would have done it already. Death 35 Bai Xi said. Dormammu, I'm here. Before Bai Xi could finish speaking, Dormammu sent another round of dark energy directly. Moreover, this attack was still invisible, and Bai Xi almost didn't notice it. Really old yin ratio. The repeated provocation. Bai Xi was naturally also angry. He erected an ice wall in front of him, and then angrily said, Dormammu, I'm here to end your sins. Dimensions can devour each other. So the relationship of the dimension Mephisto is definitely not harmonious. That's why Dormammu did it when he saw Bai Xi. If Bai Xi's dimension is swallowed, his dark dimension will become larger again. The stronger the dark dimension, the stronger the strength of Dormammu, as is the case with any dimension Mephisto. Especially, now the home of Dormammu. AF, he has no reason not to do it. But conversely, if Bai Xi's dimension devours the dark dimension, what will happen to his strength? Facing Bai Xi's words, Dormammu didn't respond, but just started directly. In just an instant, Dormammu's body grew infinitely larger, as if it had become a planet-like file size. The original inhabitants of the dark world immediately hid in fear. But it is Dormammu's appearance that has attracted everyone's attention. Endless magical flames enveloped Dormammu, and all sorts of strange magical energies surround him. In the distance where no one noticed, a silver-haired girl hid behind the stone and watched this scene. She is also a witch, with silver hair and a red necromancer robe. He's a real hero. She looked at Bai Xi, who was confronting Dormammu, and muttered to herself. There was an expression of admiration on his face. People in the dark dimension are extremely resentful of Dormammu, even though she's Dormammu's niece. Did you think I wouldn't? Seeing Dormammu's appearance, Bai Xi immediately clenched his fists. The breath of death surged to him, and then his body began to swell. With their strength, they can freely change their file size and even their shape. Dormammu snorted coldly and looked at the equally huge Bai Xi, and the reality suddenly distorted. It's like the whole world is starting to turn around, and it's getting really awkward. The ground becomes uneven and the sky changes color, as if he wanted to distort Bai Xi directly into a human form. But face this trick. Bai Xi simply snapped his fingers. Back in time. Time suddenly went back to before Dormammu cast this ability. Dormammu froze for a moment. Although he transcends time, time is very profound, and his ability cannot transcend time. Bai Xi didn't do the time loop, but this trick is enough. Apparently, no one but Dormammu knew that time had been turned back for a while. You actually mastered time. I hate time the most. Dormammu suddenly said angrily. Obviously, Bai Xi's move made him think of his archenemy, Sorcerer Supreme. The Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One just took the time gem, made him disgusting, and played with him at will. So did Strange later on. That's the downside of being out of time, right? Fortunately, Bai Xi also remembers what happened before the time went back, and he was not the only one who was disgusted. Dormammu's claws grabbed towards Bai Xi. The dark energy directly wanted to cover Bai Xi and control him. However, Bai Xi just stared. Omega Rays. The Omega Rays directly erased Dormammu's dark energy, then traveled through space and immediately tracked Dormammu. Ow. Dormammu was in pain, and the huge body stepped back, and the magical flames on his body seemed to have weakened a bit. Moreover, Bai Xi's Omega Rays have not stopped. It seems to be trying to erase Dormammu directly. But in the next second, Dormammu directly created an extra-dimensional dimension. Omega Rays traced the past again. But Dormammu's stature disappeared immediately. Dormammu teleported directly behind Bai Xi. Omega Rays followed. I hid myself. But who would have thought that the Omega Rays were manipulated by Bai Xi to turn around him directly and flew towards Dormammu. However, Dormammu at the moment has also hit Bai Xi. Although Bai Xi escaped by teleporting, it interrupted the Omega Rays. Dormammu's state didn't look good, but in an instant, Dormammu recovered. In the dark dimension, he is invincible and immortal. It is said that longevity is easy and death is not difficult, but in the dark dimension, it is very simple for Dormammu. Even Omega Rays cannot directly erase his multi-universe existence. Then, the two started a big fight. All kinds of powerful abilities are displayed. This is Bai Xi's first battle with Dimension Mephisto. It made him feel good. It also reminded Bai Xi that Dormammu once said that he claimed to be stronger than the God King Odin and Zeus. Mad. How strong is Odin? The end of this battle is that there is no winner. In the dark dimension, the current Bai Xi can't kill Dormammu. Definitely, Dormammu can't kill him either. So, Bai Xi gave Dormammu a shot with his heat vision, then stepped back and became smaller. Dormammu, are you just relying on your home ground? Bai Xi said. Too bad Dormammu is not stupid. With the right time and place, there is absolutely no reason not to use it. He's not like Hela, his brain is shut down. Fight again if you have the ability. Dormammu yelled at Bai Xi. Sorry, I don't fight with my defeated generals. After Bai Xi finished speaking, his figure immediately disappeared. Dormammu was so angry that he raised the place where he had just been to the void. Earth. Dormammu felt a little surprised. Isn't there a sorcerer supreme? Why is there Dimension Mephisto can come and go at will? And the mysterious silver-haired girl in the distance changed her expression after hearing the word Earth. After this battle, Bai Xi's heroic appearance completely conquered her. She had never seen anyone dare to confront Dormammu in the dark dimension. And it made Dormammu so angry and at a loss. Therefore, Bai Xi easily conquered this girl who has never been plain. His heroic presence was lingering in the girl's mind. In addition, Bai Xi's handsome appearance is something that the silver-haired girl has never seen before. So she couldn't help but want to follow Bai Xi out of the dark world immediately. I must find him and know his name. The silver-haired girl was eager to go to Earth. Chapter 70. Odin is a benevolent king. Collected infinite gems too. Thor lay on the ground like a dead fish, not resisting at all. He didn't expect to be killed even more after saying Bai Xi's name. Could it be that Bai Xi is Hela, the goddess of unrequited love and death? Or, Bai Xi is a scumbag? He actually smashed his sister whom he had never met. Perhaps it was boring for Thor to give up, and Hela stopped killing him. She likes others to resist, because it's more fun to kill that way. Base. The Night Sky Sword was inserted directly beside Thor by Hela. Say, what do you mean by what you said earlier? Hela asked, bending over and staring at Thor, who looked like a dead fish. What? Thor was a little scared by Hela's eyes. Because Hela was very angry for a while, but immediately became a little more complicated. What's going on? Bai Xi threw you in? Hela stared closely at Thor. Thor's cold sweat immediately flowed down. He lied to Hela. It was Odin who threw him in, not Bai Xi. Thor didn't know how to answer either. If the answer is wrong, he will be stabbed to death by Hela again. It suddenly occurred to him what Loki would do in this situation. That's definitely a lie. That looks calm. Yes. Thor responded, swallowing his saliva. As soon as he finished speaking, Hela's expression suddenly changed. Hela is caught between killing and not killing. After going out, will you kill Bai Xi or not? In Thor's view, it is natural to understand. Sister and brother-in-law quarreled. Although Thor has just made an Earth girlfriend, he understands it very well. Brother-in-law, he misses you very much, Thor said boldly. Hela's murderous eyes stared at him immediately. He's not your brother-in-law, and I'm not a stupid brother like you. But then, Hela immediately changed her mind and asked, is that really? Hela's eyes were fixed on Thor, as if to see if he was lying. Thor resisted being exposed. He just felt like he had guessed the truth. Bai Xi hurt his sister badly. As a younger brother, can't he help to make up for the relationship? Bai Xi, I can thank you. Due to Hela's powerful strength, and the fact that he has not yet reached the level of Ragnarok, Thor easily recognized this sister. The words brother-in-law shouted more and more smoothly. Yes, brother-in-law. Bai Xi thinks that you can't sleep, and it's not delicious to eat. Thor looked at Hela's eyes and immediately changed his mind. Hela's eyes seemed to soften, but it seemed to think of something, and immediately filled with murderous intent. Then why didn't he let me out? Kill Odin with me. Thor almost cried when he heard this. King Father is right, this goddess of death is indeed a lunatic. A few words can't do without killing Odin. But now, Thor couldn't cry. He wanted to steady Hela. At least not anymore to experience death. To be killed again, Thor suspects that he is about to collapse. Not everyone is Hela. What can be enjoyed in infinite death? Because he has more important things to do, and he said he will come with you when he is done. Thor stammered. Then got kicked by Hela. You really can't lie, stupid brother. But at this moment, the energy in the dimension suddenly vibrated, and then constantly surged. Therefore, Hela did not continue to kill him. It seemed that his anger had been vented a lot before. What's going on? Thor supported himself from the ground and asked, a little flustered. He's fighting people. Hela looked up at the surging energy and said, could it be Bai Xi really has something to do? Thor looked at her appearance, also hesitation, and then asked, what happened at that time? Hela bowed her head. Her messy hair suddenly covered her eyes, looking eerie. She no longer paid attention to the surging energy, but spoke with a little recollection. Odin at the time was a tyrant 35. He conquered the 9 realms with me, Jotunheim, Muspelheim. I brought the army down. I charged into battle for him, killed countless enemies for him, collected infinite gems for him. He actually changed his mind. 66.99 A section of the secret was revealed by Hela. Thor was already stunned. Is his father like this? Impossible. The father is a merciful king. Back to Earth, Bai Xi took a look at his own dimension. Not knowing what happened, Hela stopped killing Thor. But Thor's miserable appearance also made Bai Xi's mouth twitch. He was mentally exhausted, and his eyes seemed hollow. Moreover, the clothing of the whole body is also tattered, and I don't know how many times Hela has stabbed him with swords, and killed him many times. This Thor won't become a vegetable, will he? Looking at Thor lying motionless on the ground, Bai Xi directly pulled him out. In case of death in the dimension, how bad is it? Thor, who came out of the dimension, doesn't seem to have reacted. Looking at the dazzling sunlight, he regained some energy. Then, Thor saw Bai Xi. He hugged Bai Xi's thigh and cried, brother-in-law, save me. Bai Xi said he was just joking. Why is Thor really addicted? This can be addictive too. Then it can be seen that he was really bullied badly by Hela. Thor's strength is like a child in front of Hela. You hurry back to Asgard. Brother-in-law will help you get her done. Bai Xi said immediately. He's getting bigger and bigger in Thor's mind. Tolton reacted immediately, and immediately called Heimdall to send himself back. Definitely, don't forget to pick up a bunch of pieces of yourself before you leave. That's a shard of Mjolnir. Thor has a deep affection for the hammer. Hammer is like his girlfriend, or he will never give up. Even if it becomes a fragment, it cannot be thrown away. Bifrost turned on immediately, picking up Thor. Bai Xi, on the other hand, looked at the goddess of death, who had regained her composure. It seems that she has become a little different from before. After Hela talked to Thor for a while, he was not in a hurry, and Thor also knew how terrible Hela was. This hatred, except for Odin's death, could not be resolved, because it was impossible for Hela to forgive Odin. Even in the infinite parallel world, Hela would never forgive Odin. It's enough to see what an outrageous thing Odin has done. Thor also finally understood why Odin had held Hela, the goddess of death, for so long. The conversation between Hela and Thor, Bai Xi, as the master of the dimension, naturally heard it. The Lord of Dimension is the god of dimension. Omnipotent. Odin actually collected infinite gems. Bai Xi muttered to himself. It was especially collected by Hela for him. It seems that Hela really knows a lot of Odin's dark history. No wonder Odin is so afraid of Hela. Bai Xi thought about it carefully and found that there are indeed many things surprising. Odin must be very close to collecting infinite gems. The space gem, which he crafted into Tesseract, then built Bifrost, and placed on Earth. Reality gem, when Odin's father King Bor, was turned into Tay particles by dark elves, and hidden by Asgard. Power gems, mind gems, time gems, these are actually not difficult for God King Odin. Maybe Odin knew that these infinite gems couldn't be put together, so he threw them all out. So ruthless that not even a single infinite gem would stay in Asgard. For Odin, the only difficulty is Soul Gem. Soul Gem needs to sacrifice the person you love to get it. Maybe this is a reason why Odin changed his mind. He was reluctant to kill Hela, but he was imprisoned, showing how soft-hearted he was. But Hela doesn't know this, so she's still a war freak. Is this why the two fell out? Odin's ambition at that time was definitely not only to rule the 9 realms. Bai Xi also sided the thought of this. The old thief Odin seems to have a charitable purpose, but in fact, it was not a good thing back then. People always change. You also know to come back. Lana's voice sounded behind him. What's the matter, dear? Bai Xi immediately turned around and asked. We thought you eloped with a little bitch. Steve Rogers wakes up to a melodious melody and a Super Bowl game. However, this game is something he has already seen. No one knows why SHIELD made such a low-level mistake. Maybe they can't find tapes of other games? Or do you not even know when the Captain of the United States was frozen? Even after being frozen for so long, the body is rigid and has not moved for decades. But he was still fierce. Watching the nurse open the door and come in, Steve restrained her and rushed out of the small room. 0. Ask for flowers. Bang. 35. He directly smashed a human-shaped hole and then ran outside. The female agent naturally immediately called draw to all the agents to encircle him. But the United States captain is still a United States captain. Even if he was unarmed, no one could stop him who wanted to escape. In the siege of countless agents, Steve easily rushed out of the SHIELD building. He kept running, like Forrest Gump. Countless agents were chasing him behind him, until he left everyone behind. Then, he stopped in the middle of the road. He lost his way, and didn't know where to run. Looking up at the high-rise buildings that were long out of his time, Steve Rogers was immediately confused. There is no ship that can carry me in the sea of the new era. This idea suddenly popped into his mind. Although it is not this sentence, but the truth is similar. He does not belong to this era. He was eliminated. Veteran, welcome to the new world. 39. Nick Fury got out of the car and held out his hand to Steve Rogers. The world doesn't belong to me anymore. 35. When he came back to his senses, Steve, who was shaking hands with Nick Fury, suddenly smiled dryly. Also, I missed a dance. Steve Rogers doesn't know if he can adapt to this era. Maybe he will never be able to because he is an antique. That's probably why he chose not to return in the old days after returning infinite gems. This new world, after all, does not belong to an old antique like him. Loki took the psychic scepter that Thanos had given him and asked in high spirits, which planet are we going to conquer? Earth, the center of the 9 realms. Thanos said to him. Loki, who was about to answer, suddenly stopped. He thought of the murderous look in Odin's eyes. If he dares to invade the 9 realms with an army, Odin will definitely kill him with a spear, right? Isn't this to die for? Is that in the territory of the 9 realms, or the center of the 9 realms? Heimdall can't see anything that happens in the 9 realms. What's the difference between that and courting death? Loki said immediately, wanting to change place. Earth is so dangerous. The army of Asgard could arrive at any time. These Chitauri are as fragile as paper against Asgard's army, Loki confirms. What's more, there may be sisters and brother-in-laws who don't know how strong they are. That brother-in-law is not a good person. And looking at Odin Rage's appearance, it is estimated that my sister is not easy to mess with. However, Thanos Ceres just rose from the dangling throne. You just charge. I'll take care of the rest for you. Lay down the earth. I don't want anything. Let you be its king. 55. Hearing Thanos' words, Loki suddenly fell into doubt. It was because the throne was so tempting to him that Loki ignored other things and agreed directly. Loki knew it was impossible to be king of the earth for long. Asgard would teach him to be human. So, Loki just wanted to prove himself that he was more qualified to be the king of Asgard than Thor. Just like a child. Thanos, on the other hand, didn't seem to care at all. His purpose was just to try. The so-called Loki, the mere prince of Asgard, is just a pawn. Thanos has been planning for a long time, and he knows that the plot for Infinite Gems must be completed in a very short time. Otherwise, there will be big changes. Infinite Gems cannot be put together. This is cosmic wisdom. Asgard, there are people from Thanos too. He could even know Asgard's movements. Naturally, I never thought that Loki would be able to take down the earth with a cannon fodder like army of Chitauri. He just wanted to know where the infinite gems were. By the way, let Earth keep mine gem. Then he won't have to run around. Only a fool like Loki can be so brainless and confident. Loki in ecstasy, unaware that he was being tricked in the first place. From this it can be seen that the son that Odin taught is really not good. One is worse than one. Looking back, the best is actually Hela, the goddess of death. However, Hela's character is too manic and uncontrollable. I need to think of a complete plan. Loki opened his mouth and turned to leave. Thanos looked at his back and sneered silently. Stupid Asgard. Please ask for automatic subscription. Readers, please click billion. Chapter 71. The Queen of God. Frigga, son-in-law, please come to the door. Father. Thor almost cried when he saw Odin. Odin didn't expect Thor to be like this just by seeing Hela. However, Odin felt very moved. She's amazing. Thor took the shard of the hammer and said, if she comes out, Asgard is over. Hearing Thor's words, Odin's expression immediately changed again. The corners of his mouth twitched waist. Odin really wanted to yell at him. Are you so unsure of yourself? Odin asked. You're Thor. Thor, you're not the god of hammers, and you still can't understand 99. Odin shook his head in disappointment. As if seeing his disappointment, Thor was also very sad. But he deeply knew the gap between himself and Hela. These thousands of years are irreparable. The longer Asgard lives, the stronger Hela can easily crush him, who is Hela's sister, and outlived him by thousands of years. Father, is Ragnarok going to happen? Silent Thor asked suddenly. This is what Hela told him. The people of Asgard believe in so-called prophecy. Even Odin is a firm believer. What else did she say to you? Odin asked Thor. Although he had already guessed in his heart, Thor did not answer, but said, Father, maybe there is only one way to save Asgard. What way? Of course Odin didn't believe it. Brother-in-law. I found that she was different, only when she mentioned her brother-in-law. Thor said. He noticed that Odin's face was getting darker. A good white man almost turned into a black man. Fortunately, Odin recovered. You mean that Earthman? 50 Odin fell silent for a moment. The Earthling stole the dimension he left to Hela and became the dimension Mephisto. This made Odin furious. As a result, Thor told him another amazing thing. That is, not only did Hela lose the dimension, but she herself was conquered by Bai Xi. This is simply to lose the wife and lose the army. This made Odin wish he wanted to go to Earth now and fight against Bai Xi. The gentle goddess Frigga reappeared to soothe Odin's emotions. It can be said that behind every successful man, there is a gentle woman. And behind every successful woman, there is a, why not try Thor's method? Frigga asked. I can't reconcile with her. Odin shook his head decisively. He knew that what he did, Hela would never let him go. He took down Hela's Legion of Death. He sent Valkyrie to hunt down Hela. He imprisoned Hela in the dimension and wanted her to relinquish the throne of Asgard. Odin has done too much, and he knows he's sorry for Hela. Bai Xi, unexpectedly, Asgard also plays patriarchal. Odin said Hela's reasons were simply untenable. If Hela is replaced by Thor, Odin will never switch levels for so long. Just shivering cold. Hela is my daughter too, why not give it a try? Frigga is persuading hard. As a mother, the last thing she likes to see is the cannibalism of her children. Then what do you say? Odin asked Frigga. Go and invite your son-in-law to Asgard. Frigg said. He's not even a prospective son-in-law. Odin said suddenly. Bai Xi did not know that he was unknowingly recognized by Frigg as his son-in-law. It can only be said that the mother-in-law looked at the son-in-law, and the more she looked, the more satisfied she became. Frigga had never known him. But after knowing it, I kept watching. Finally found out. Bai Xi is a pretty good guy. Young and more golden, handsome and handsome. The most important thing is that he is strong and can overwhelm Hela. After living for so long, it was the first time Frigg saw a man who could suppress Hela with his own strength. Even Frigga doesn't know how strong Bai Xi is. As a result, the Empress of God suddenly felt that she would not be able to marry her daughter if she did not marry her. The son-in-law of Bai Xi was identified. Bai Xi doesn't know all this yet. He is being harassed by Mariah Hill. What's the matter? Hackers? Bai Xi asked directly. Although Mariah Hill is no longer wearing a black agent suit, she is still wearing SHIELD. Definitely, the most important thing is that she has a stern look on her face. How could anyone ask for someone like that? A look of helplessness flashed across Mariah Hill's face. We have something that you must be interested in, she said to Bai Xi, trying her best to have some expression on her face. That's all you seem to say, Hill Agent, Bai Xi said to her. Lana on the side looked at the two suspiciously. Then she waved her hand, and a cup of coffee flew to Mariah Hill. No thank you. She immediately refused. But Lana won't let her say no. No way. The Hill Agent could only pick it up and take a sip. Hiss, so hot. Little did she know that Lana was targeting her on purpose. Hill Agent said bitterly in his heart, I don't dress like that anymore. Why are you still targeting me? Seeing this situation, Bai Xi didn't hesitate. Sure enough, you still have to pick up girls when no one is there. Mariah Hill looked at Bai Xi with her eyes fixed, trying her best to have no emotion. Seeing her like this, Bai Xi had no choice but to say, what is it, Hill Agent? Cough. Mariah Hill looked at Lana. They are all their own, Bai Xi said. Lana and Susan gave him a tender look, and then took the initiative to leave. Women, to deal with them is to retreat into advance. Hill Agent looked at the scumbag in front of him, and then said, Tesseract. I'm not very interested. Bai Xi shook his head. It's just a space gem. For him who has teleportation and dimensional teleportation, it's really not very useful. This is a private invitation. Mariah Hill immediately twisted the strands of hair around her ear and said, but it doesn't matter if you go and see. I'm not interested in Tesseract. I'm interested in you. When Lana was not around, Bai Xi immediately released himself. Bai Xi and Mariah Hill walked out of the villa. Hearing that, Hill just rolled his eyes at him. When Bai Xi was puzzled, she said, but you can only call Hill Agent. Are you flirting with me? Bai Xi asked. I didn't mean it 55 as you wish. Hill got on the Hornet and looked out the window. Bai Xi misplaced again when shifting gears. Mariah Hill immediately grabbed his hand. Isn't this car driven by itself? Think she's the idiot. Bai Xi held it back and explained. It's called Bumblebee, and it's an Autobot. Autobots? Mariah Hill really forgot Bai Xi's actions and was attracted by his words. Yes, it is not the artificial intelligence you think, but a real life form, Bai Xi said with a smile, but didn't say much. Just tell her that it is a living body, but nothing else. Moreover, Mariah Hill was still lost in thought. Forgot what Bai Xi was doing. Bumblebee stopped in suburban New York. There is an underground base for SHIELD. Nick Fury knows the truth about the 3 caves of the Sly Rabbit. He has countless bases and shelters. Some are known to others, some are not even known to Mariah Hill. But this is a relatively large base. Bai Xi hugged Mariah Hill's waist smoothly. She immediately took Bai Xi's hand. This is a base, follow me. The gaze of the agent next to him made the Hill Agent feel a little blush. Can you not do this in public? Bai Xi, you mean when no one is there? Mariah Hill took Bai Xi all the way down and past many levels. It can be seen that SHIELD still attaches great importance to Tesseract. After all, this thing has been around for a long time. Got it during the Red Skull days, but never really used it. At best just use the energy of the Tesseract to do something. This is only the most superficial use. Bai Xi looked at a girl in front of him with a strange expression. Short blonde hair, she doesn't look too old. The girl immediately became shy when she saw Bai Xi. Little Spider-Man, Bai Xi said. The girl in front of him was Gwen, the ghost Spider-Man. He didn't expect that Gwen would join SHIELD without even a headgear. It seems completely brainwashed by Nick Fury. Bai Xi, long time no see. Gwen shyly said. Why are you here? Bai Xi asked immediately. Mariah Hill knew that the two met, so she went straight ahead and led the way. They promised me that they would send me back to my own world, and this Tesseract is an opportunity. 99 Gwen looked at Bai Xi and said, with some hope in his eyes. She is still imagining. Silly boy. You are better off relying on SHIELD than your brother. Apparently, the kid has been crippled by Nick Fury. Such a useful tool. How could Nick Fury send her back? It is definitely reserved to continue to squeeze and use. Bai Xi didn't know what to say for a while, so he could only squeeze out a smile. I believe this is a good opportunity. He opened his mouth to speak. When Gwen left, Bai Xi immediately said 0 to Mariah Hill. Do you have a good conscience? To deceive a girl like this? Hearing Bai Xi's words, Hill Agent said immediately. We didn't lie to her. It's just that SHIELD''S current technology can't send her back to the original world. Jinbing's kind is completely a mistake, and finding it and sending it back are completely different. After hearing her explanation, Bai Xi didn't care anymore. After all, he didn't have much friendship with Spider-Gwen. Just happened to see her bump into the billboard. Very miserable. Other than that, there is not much communication. Soon, Bai Xi saw Tesseract, and Dr. Eric was busy beside it. Dr. Eric is Thor's girlfriend Jane Foster's mentor. Very interested in astronomy. Then I was invited by SHIELD to study Tesseract. That's what SHIELD made to Thor. After all, the girlfriend's mentor showed the love of SHIELD. Definitely different. Mariah Hill stood aside and said, "This is the Tesseract. I definitely know." Bai Xi said immediately. Hill Agent just smiles. Hill knew he was mysterious and seemed to know a lot of unknown things. Do you know how many people in the universe are looking for it? Bai Xi said immediately. You still don't understand anything, and you dare to study it casually. 35 looks like Nick Fury didn't listen to me. 99 Bai Xi mentions Nick Fury with disdain. He was equally disdainful of SHIELD. Saying that, Bai Xi felt a magic breath on the Tesseract. He looked strange. What's wrong? Mariah Hill asked. I have something to go out for. After Bai Xi finished speaking, he put his hand on the Tesseract. Hey. Mariah Hill just wanted to remind him. Then Bai Xi's figure disappeared. We were tricked by him again. She immediately told Nick Fury. Nick Fury is also extremely helpless. I don't know why he hates SHIELD so much. Obviously we are good people. Bai Xi was naturally unaware of Nick Fury's feel-good statement. This has always been his attitude towards SHIELD. Existence or non-existence makes no difference to him at all. As long as Natasha Romanoff and they are doing well. At the moment, he passed directly through the Tesseract's teleportation and came to a place surrounded by clouds and mists in the distance. The clouds seem to be on you, like a fairyland on Earth. Nearby is the Great Plains. The magnificent palace can be seen at a glance. All kinds of ancient European style buildings, coupled with the feeling of future technology blowing. Countless flight machines shuttled between buildings and then docked in the distant flight port. Here it is, Asgard. Looking up at the resplendent palace, he was speechless for a while. Shock. Apart from Asgard, there is no place for such extravagant architecture. How is it? Asgard is more shocking than you think. Like the 4.5 miles? Boy. A voice sounded in his ear. Bai Xi just sighed. I only saw the blood and blood in the 9 realms. This is inevitable. The 9 realms need a ruler. The voice spoke again. But you are the Warner Protoss, so support Odin so much. Bai Xi turned his head and looked at the person next to him. God Queen, Frigga. At Asgard, not many can do that. When Bai Xi saw the Tesseract, magical energy appeared on the Tesseract. It was made by Odin as a Tesseract and threw it to Earth, and Frigga probably moved it back then, so it could be remotely controlled. Bai Xi didn't want to talk about it at first, but when he found out that it was Frigga and not Odin who was looking for him, his expression suddenly became strange. Under Frigg's warm invitation, Bai Xi agreed and sent it directly. The Warner Protoss is only for the pacification of the 9 realms, and they were even the enemies of the Asgard people for a time. Frigga laughed as she spoke, and she is the bond that maintains Asgard and the Warner Protoss. Without Frigga, the Vanners would still be one of the enemies of the Asgard. Bai Xi only felt that this goddess was very peaceful. No wonder both Thor and Loki love her so much. Maybe even Hela is no exception. Do you like Golden Hall? Frigga asked. Not bad. Bai Xi was non-committal. The moment he saw the Golden Hall, he had the feeling that Liu Bang and Xiang Yu saw the first Emperor's car. The man should be like this. He can take his place. Unfortunately, it will soon be in ruins. 35 Frigg looked into the distance and said, Empress God, is there anything you want me to do? Bai Xi looked at Frigga in confusion. Could it be that the old cow wants to eat tender grass? Chapter 72 Bai Xi vs Odin, you are like a candle in the wind. Frigga didn't know what was in Bai Xi's mind. Otherwise, Bai Xi will be driven away. Let's talk about your wedding. 99 Frigga opened her mouth and shocked Bai Xi directly. So he asked subconsciously, with whom? Frigg said, Hela, my daughter. 6699. Hearing this, Bai Xi had a strange expression for a while. He didn't know whether to be happy or unhappy. Fortunately, Frigga didn't frighten him to death, otherwise he would have fucked Odin to death. But with Hela, isn't that a joke? No, absolutely not. Actually, Hela and I have nothing at all, Bai Xi said to Frigga. Frigga smiled and said, I know what you said. That's just high. Bai Xi thought for a while and continued, Odin thief will not agree. Frigg looked at him again and said, the king of God will agree. Hela won't agree. Bai Xi stopped before he finished speaking. Well, Hela will agree too. This crazy woman has been completely conquered by Bai Xi. So, Frigga just looked at him with a smile. Bai Xi immediately smiled and said, well, we will get married in 500 years. 66.99. Now it was finally Frigga's turn to be speechless. 500 years ago, Ragnarok had already happened. Actually, I know what you're thinking. Ragnarok is avoidable, Bai Xi said. As long as Odin doesn't believe in the prophecy, Asgard can be destroyed. Odin is too powerful. It was the flame giant Surt he suppressed back then, and he collected Surt's the eternal fire as a trophy. Odin can do it more than 1,000 years ago, but can't it be done now? Now Odin will only be stronger than he was then. But he was convinced Ragnarok was coming. To Bai Xi's helplessness, Queen Frigga is also stubborn. She didn't even want to avoid her own death. How could she interfere with Odin's death? In Bai Xi's view, all this can be easily avoided. If Frigga didn't choose 08 to die, Odin wouldn't be disheartened and choose to die before Ragnarok. The so-called Ragnarok is completely the Odin family killed themselves. Ragnarok is immutable. 55. Odin's voice sounded behind Bai Xi. Bai Xi looked back. Odin had come behind him fully armed. He came to Asgard. How could Odin as a god king not know? There is nothing in this world that cannot be changed. 35. However, in the face of Odin, Bai Xi is not at all cowardly. There is no life in this world. He doesn't believe it himself. As if seeing Bai Xi's thoughts, Odin, holding the spear of eternity, said, since the appearance of the EC Protus, Ragnarok is inevitable, and it will definitely come. All we can do is fight constantly in Ragnarok, face a cruel fate, fight to the end, and die. Dusk is not the end, but a new dawn, a new hope, a new beginning. As for the fate, the people of Asgard believe in it, and the prophecies of the past have also been fulfilled one by one. So, this is a reason why they are more and more convinced. But Bai Xi knew what the so-called new beginning was. If a new beginning is the Asgard people all lingering in one corner of the earth, Thor also became Fat Thor. That would be too funny. Bai Xi shook his head. He was not from Asgard anyway. It was none of his business. Unless Odin now puts the crown on his head and makes him king of Asgard. Otherwise, what does it have to do with him? Ragnarok is Ragnarok. Sorry, why should I help you? So, Bai Xi asked. Want to kidnap Hela because of his unrequited love? How is this possible? Help Asgard, help the earth. 359. Frigg held down Odin and said, Asgard is the protector of the 9 realms. If Asgard is there, foreign enemies in the universe will not dare to invade the 9 realms. Once Asgard is not there. Hearing Frigga's words, Bai Xi nodded. This is indeed a reason. But, so what? But you made a little mistake. Bai Xi said. Earth is not as fragile as you think. You mean Sorcerer Supreme? Odin said. The Sorcerer Supreme is strong, but doesn't care about the universe. 35. No, because the earth has me. Bai Xi said very confidently. The arrogant boy. Odin immediately blew his beard and said, I knew this cunning mortal could not be trusted, and I want to teach you a lesson. I also want to see how strong the God King Odin is. Bai Xi said to Odin. Odin originally just wanted to threaten Bai Xi a little. Who would have thought that Bai Xi would really have a fight with him? Odin panicked for a while. His sleep of Odin was not completed completely, resulting in a very weak state, and the power of Odin in his body was extremely disordered. In addition, Odin, who is already old, doesn't want to mess with people at will. The old Odin was able to hold back the provocation of the king of giants of Jotunheim, showing that his ambitions were almost exhausted. Although he is very strong, his heart is no longer. Odin is no longer at his peak. You are like a candle in the wind. Bai Xi looked at Odin hesitation and was extremely disappointed. Dormammu said he was stronger than Odin, so Bai Xi wanted to see Odin's strength. Otherwise, why did he hide his strength for so long? Odin was finally inspired to fight by Bai Xi. "You are provoking the king of God," Odin said. Seeing the belligerent look of the two of them, Frigg couldn't help but step aside. Asgard people are belligerent, Hela is so, Thor is so, and Odin was so young. Now, Odin finally has the will to fight again. Seeing Frigg retreat, Odin threw the eternal spear directly in his hand. Kunguni, the spear of eternity, also known as Gungnir and Kunguni. According to legend, whoever swears to Kunguni, his oath will surely come true. The spear of eternity directly turned into a streaming light, as if it pierced through the interstellar space in an instant, directly locking Bai Xi, and flew towards him. The handle of the spear of eternity is also made from the branches of the world tree. Its ability is also very simple, but powerful. Once the spear of eternity is thrown, it will definitely hit the target. It can pierce through anything. It is invincible, and then it will automatically return to the master's hand. At the moment, those within the 9 realms raised their heads and looked at the sky. A meteor flashed by, and countless people began to make wishes to Kunguni. The spear of eternity was just a moment, like a meteor piercing the world before Bai Xi. Bai Xi felt huge amounts of pressure. The huge power of Odin on Odin was revealed in an instant. More pressure on him than anyone else. Is this the power of the God King? Frozen thousands of miles. The thick ice wall was broken in an instant, and the endless cold air only caused a layer of mist to form on the spear of eternity. Not even the slightest delay was achieved. The effect of breaking down everything, triggering directly. Countless pieces of ice were scattered all over the place. Bai Xi directly started to fold the space with the ability of mirror space, trying to block the spear of eternity. But the spear of eternity remains, through space to the front. Serious punch. No way. Bai Xi could only punch in the past. The fist collided with the head of the spear of eternity, and the spear of eternity was finally blown away. Bai Xi's fist was only a little sore. The spear of eternity spun around Bai Xi, turned into a shooting star, and wanted to return to Odin's hands. But at the moment, Bai Xi directly took out the mantra lasso. The lasso of mantra was made by Hephaestus, the god of fire, from the golden belt of Gaia, the goddess of the earth. The lasso was given by the goddess Hestia, and the moon goddess Artemis personally tied it to a divine arrow and shot it down from Mount Olympus. The function of the mantra lasso is not only to let people tell the truth, but also to let people see the truth. Another point is that it is unbreakable. Unbreakable meets unbreakable. Is the equipment of the Nordic gods stronger, or the equipment of the Greek gods better? Bai Xi threw out the mantra lasso, and the lasso instantly entangled the spear of eternity that was about to fly back to Odin's hands. King. The mantra lasso shone with golden light, and in an instant it became as strong as a golden hoop. It's not like rope, but metal. The characteristics of the spear of eternity also began to trigger. The two fetishes exuded the sound of metal collision in the air. Clang clang. When the unbreakable meets the unbreakable end, the two will not give in to each other. But in the end, the noose of mantra could not be broken. Odin looked at the lasso of mantra in shock. He felt a familiar aura on this equipment. God of fire, goddess of earth. In Odin's youth, the Greek pantheon also existed, and it is on the earth among the 9 realms. Therefore, Odin at that time did not go to war on earth. The strength of the god King Zeus is not inferior to him, and even Odin is not sure of winning. It was not until later that the Greek gods were destroyed, and the EC gods truly unified the 9 realms. But now, Odin felt the breath of Greek pantheon again. Bai Xi grabbed the mantra lasso's hand and pulled, and the mantra lasso was dragged back directly by him. The spear of eternity naturally did not return to Odin's hands. You are their descendant. Odin sensed the breath on Bai Xi's body and said. He just thought at first that Bai Xi was a thief, or thief. He stole the dimension he left to Hela, and also stole Hela's heart. But now, Odin carefully felt the breath on Bai Xi's body. It turns out that Bai Xi is a demigod. Coupled with the breath of the Greek pantheon on the mantra lasso, Odin immediately believed that Bai Xi was the descendant of the Greek gods. Bai Xi is naturally confused. Riddler? But seeing Odin staring at the mantra lasso in his hand, Bai Xi understood a little. He wouldn't think that he was also a descendant of God, would he? I'm not, not me. Bai Xi naturally denied Sanlian. Whether you are or not. Immediately, Odin also continued to work. His fighting spirit grew stronger. Odin made a move, and the Spear of Eternity finally flew back into his hands. But when he wanted to use the Spear of Eternity again, he found that Bai Xi had disappeared. It wasn't a teleportation, because his figure didn't appear again. Odin turned and stabbed directly behind him. There was no one behind him, and even the air did not fluctuate. Odin stabbed in the air, but he was punched, sending him a step backwards. He turned around, and saw that there was still no one there. Stealth? 500. Odin sneered. Little trick 99. Odin hammered the handle of the Spear of Eternity on the ground, and suddenly endless energy spread out. Bai Xi's figure was also hit, and his figure was revealed by the energy, as if water had been poured on him. Bai Xi immediately put away the Supreme Lord Ring. The invisibility ability of the Supreme Lord of the Rings is still very powerful, and even Odin didn't discover it for the first time. Odin will use equipment to bully people. Bai Xi asked shamelessly. The sneak attack he made just now was done with serious punch. However, hitting Odin only made him take a step back. Not how strong Odin's body is. It's the destroyer armor on him. Back then, Odin was wearing the destroyer armor, and even singled out the entire team of gods. He even cut off the arm of one of the gods. Definitely, the end is that Odin is also abused in the end. But it also shows how powerful the destroyer armor is. It's definitely not the kind of toy that can be smashed by Thor's hammer. At the moment, when Odin was worn, the most powerful force was exerted. Equipment is also a part of strength. Facing Bai Xi's words, Odin responded calmly. Really, I hate these gods the most. Even if his strength is stronger than others, he still likes to rely on powerful equipment. Thor, this guy's missing Mjolnir and the Storm Axe. Wonder Woman Diana goes even further. When I left Paradise Island, I was dressed in a divine costume. Therefore, Bai Xi strikes first and becomes stronger. He teleported directly behind Odin. Odin's Spear of Eternity swept back directly, while Bai Xi directly grabbed the body of the Spear of Eternity. During the wrestling between the two sides, Odin's head turned around. Odin at the moment is fully dressed in the destroyer armor. So, at the moment it wasn't Odin's head that turned, but the head plate of the destroyer's warframe. But even so, can it still be like this? Bai Xi didn't even think about it, and then he saw that the mask of the destroyer's armor was opened, and a wave of fire appeared. Seeing this scene, Bai Xi's eyes also turned red. Hot sight. When Bai Xi's heat vision broke out, the mask of the destroyer's armor also emitted the light of destruction. Two extremely high lasers collided in the air. Boom. In an instant, there was a strong explosion, sending both Bai Xi and Odin flying. Bai Xi and Odin fell to the ground. The trial is over, Odin said, ready to hold back. But right now, it's time to stop. Everyone else will know. Frigga opened her mouth and said, looking at the Asgard people who had noticed movement in the distance. Bai Xi and Odin looked at each other suddenly. Chapter 73 Asgard people meet friends by martial arts. Hydra has been discovered. Unexpectedly, Odin, who was still full of fighting spirit, suddenly no longer threatened. The breath on him disappeared in vain. In an instant, he turned into the kind god king again. This wife is strict. You are the king of gods. Bai Xi immediately began to complain. He still wanted to see Odin's true strength. Unexpectedly, as soon as Frigga opened her mouth, Odin immediately stopped. Definitely, this is also because Odin doesn't want to shoot in front of his own people. A benevolent king will not subdue his people by force. Father, what happened? At this moment, Thor, who flew over with the hammer, shouted. After he saw Bai Xi clearly, he immediately understood 66.99. Even he couldn't say those two words without Hela. Only in the face of Hela's life and death threat will he abandon it all. In fact, Thor is in a very complicated mood right now. He was reluctant to admit Hela as a sister, but he was indeed convinced by Hela. Hela's powerful strength made him have to admit this eldest sister. In short, Thor was extremely confused. Hearing Thor's words, Odin replied, "We are welcoming the distinguished guests." And Thor actually nodded. Because in his opinion, the Asgard people are like that. Make friends with Wu. Then I would like to thank the King of God for his hospitality. Bai Xi sneered at Odin. Not having fun. Odin didn't care either, but Frigga smiled and said, if you have time, you can come to Asgard to play more. This is your home 266.99 goodbye. Bai Xi thought in his heart, and the madman-like appearance of Hela appeared in front of him. Hair disheveled, like a ghost. Glancing at the Asgard people who kept approaching, Bai Xi instantly moved and disappeared. What a child. Frigg looked at the place where Bai Xi disappeared and said. Odin was speechless when he heard the words. Where the hell is Bai Xi? In the Dark Universe, on a meteorite. Loki, who was playing with the Mind Scepter, suddenly raised his head. He is a magician, and although he plays melee a lot, he is very sensitive to energy. The volatility of Tesseract. Loki murmured found at this location on Earth. Of course he knew about infinite gems. In the Odin family, apart from Thor, even Loki knows infinite gems. He knew that the Tesseract was the space gem, and the one he was playing with was the mind gem. If he could get to infinite gems, the plan would be safe. Now Loki has not thought about whether Thanos is also eyeing infinite gems. Because for countless years, no one has actually collected infinite gems. Not even the God King Odin could do it. Looking at the direction of the 9 realms, a plan gradually took shape in Loki's mind. Father, Mother, Thor, I will prove to you that I'm the real king. Loki muttered to himself. Naturally he knew he was the giants of Jotunheim. But, so what? Behind Loki is Chitauri, who has begun to assemble the overwhelming Chitauri dragon battleship and the armored Chita Swiss soldiers. SHIELD had no idea that Tesseract was being targeted. They are still working on this energy-filled thing. Even if Bai Xi had already warned them. But constantly dying is the spirit of SHIELD. Bai Xi naturally ignored SHIELD. At the moment he was at home, facing the torture of both Lorna and Susan. Maybe it feels like enough has been made up for the previous lack. Lorna actually changed the taste. She likes light meals now. I want to taste the original taste of the ingredients. That's why Lorna. So, Bai Xi looked at the Cantonese style roast goose in front of him. This is to the original taste of the ingredients. Bai Xi complained. Isn't it delicious? Lorna was a little sad. Susan is also a little disappointed. This is the result of their joint efforts. It's not that it's not delicious, but I think that, if you eat it raw, the original taste of the ingredients may be more. Bai Xi said solemnly. Lorna's face darkened immediately. You have to eat. Lorna said wickedly. 66.99 Bai Xi was speechless for a moment. This is not the first time. The two have tortured him since his return from Asgard. Maybe the last time I walked with Mariah Hill too neatly? Fortunately, someone saved his life this time. Tony Stark is visiting. When he saw the roast goose on the table, he immediately squeezed a piece and threw it directly into his mouth. Huge gift crab. Tony shouted immediately after taking a bite. But under the murderous gazes of Lorna and Susan, he swallowed it abruptly. Is it delicious, Tony? Bai Xi asked immediately. It's delicious. It's so delicious. I've never had such authentic chicken. Tony said with a bitter face. It's goose. Whatever it is, you can eat more if it's delicious. Bai Xi brought the plates to Tony. It gave Tony the urge to get up and go. Fortunately, Lorna did not continue to tease him. Tony breathed a sigh of relief and then said to Bai Xi, Bai, I suddenly have a feeling that I want a prodigal son to turn back. Seeing Tony Stark's serious look, Bai Xi glanced at him up and down. Playboys want to get married too? Tony said suddenly, you don't understand. After a person dies once, he will cherish the life in front of him even more. Then who do you want to marry? Bai Xi asked immediately. I'm still looking, hoping to find a true love. Tony sighed. At his age, his father Howard was ready to give birth to him. Perhaps already. The best is always there. Bai Xi patted his shoulder and said. He was referring, of course, to small peppers. Tony must have had an idea when he told him this now. But, the idea is not firm enough. It is difficult for a person like him who is used to seeing forests, to stop for a tree. If you really get to that point, as many people say, there is no difference in finding an honest person. Small peppers. Really honest. And very capable. Stop talking about it. The stock of She Stark group is about to start flying. Tony said excitedly, the arc reactor of the new element. Only one can supply New York City's electricity for a year. 35 we are going to make money. Seeing Tony's excited look, Bai Xi shook his head and said, do you think I look like someone who lacks money? Bai Xi is no longer interested in these mundane things. Otherwise, just sell high and buy low. Tony was speechless when he saw Bai Xi pretending to be. Looking at it like this, he doesn't even know who is the richest man in the world. Time passed smoothly until this day. Natasha Romanoff came directly to the house to look for him. Bai Xi was basking in the sun leisurely when he saw Natasha Romanoff in a jacket getting off the bus. Natasha Romanoff, with her hands in her pockets and wireless headphones, laughed as she looked at the laid-back Bai Xi. I remember you didn't like to sunbathe before. Yelena refused to ask you to accompany her on the swing. Bai Xi suddenly smiled when he heard the words. At that time, Yelena's favorite thing was to play on the swing, and she had to swing very high every time, and often fall down, and then cry red nose. Only delicious food can stop the tears. People change. Hearing Bai Xi's answer, Natasha Romanoff also nodded. They are all different from before. Somehow, it turned out to be a little sentimental. Natasha Romanoff was a little fortunate afterwards. Fortunately, she was protected by a symbiotic talisman and did not receive the cruel training like other agents. She stopped thinking about it and said, Yelena is looking for us, so I'll pick you up. Hearing Natasha Romanoff's words, Bai Xi also stood up. His skin still didn't turn black. Still as white as a born baby. So much so that Natasha Romanoff took 2 glances. Although Natasha Romanoff, like other Westerners, likes to have a healthy tan. However, there is also some yearning for this kind of whiteness. Bai Xi got into Natasha Romanoff's car directly. Natasha Romanoff sat in the driver's seat and took off a headset for him. I heard it's very romantic for couples to do this, Natasha Romanoff said in her somewhat raspy voice. Bai Xi smiled and put it on his ear. A melodious song suddenly came from inside, which seemed to be a love song. Unexpectedly, Natasha Romanoff is quite sentimental. Natasha Romanoff drove all the way to the outskirts in an uninhabited manner. Many Westerners like to live in the suburbs because the space is very large and they are very free. Various farms and estates are everywhere. Drive into the manor and there is a black flight device parked inside. A dark-skinned female agent was already waiting for them. She is a member of Black Widow. She's waiting for us. 35 The black woman spoke up. She naturally refers to Yelena. Yelena now leads the Black Widows, but to show equality, she doesn't let anyone call her leader. And these Black Widows, they didn't dare to call Yelena's name directly. Let's go, Bai Xi said, walking ahead. Natasha Romanoff followed him closely, highlighting his noble identity. Black Widows also know that Bai Xi has a special status. Soon, the flight machine left here. Our current base is in Mexico. The black woman driving the flight machine said. It seems that many organizations like to put their bases here. Fortunately, Mexico is not far from the lighthouse country and has been bullied by it. The flight device suddenly landed in a hidden base. As soon as she got down, the enthusiastic Yelena hugged her up. I miss you, Yelena said without hesitation. The other Black Widows snickered. Bai Xi looked at the number of people and said, it seems to have increased again. Yelena responded, we rescue them all over the world. Natasha Romanoff looked and nodded. Yelena looked at her and said, yes, I know where Alexei is being held, but I didn't save him. I won't save him either. Natasha Romanoff also said, when he heard the words, if it wasn't for Alexei and the Iron Lady Melina, they would not have been taken to polar bears. So long to be separated from Bai Xi. Poor Alexei, it is estimated that he will never get out of the snow prison in this life. What was the great discovery that called us here? Bai Xi interrupted their sadness. If the conversation goes on, the two of them will probably have tears in their eyes. Definitely, this is an exaggeration. But the mood will certainly be unstable. Yelena packed her emotions and walked to a monitor with Bai Xi and Natasha Romanoff. We were on our way to rescue our sisters when a group clashed with us and seemed to want to rob our sisters too. Yelena said this to the two of them. What organization? Bai Xi asked with a feeling. Yelena was silent for a moment, then looked at Natasha Romanoff and said, you should have known an SHIELD. It's called Hydra. After Yelena finished speaking, she tapped it casually, and a sign appeared on the screen. The red and black is the main body of the logo, a blood red skull, and then there are 6 tentacle-like things below. Hydra. Bai Xi glanced at Yelena, and didn't expect Yelena to dig out Hydra so early. Underestimate her ability. And Natasha Romanoff was shocked. Raw said, impossible. She looked at the Hydra logo and continued. In SHIELD records, Hydra was completely destroyed after World War II. That's because SHIELD became Snake Shield. Yelena immediately answered, do you know the slogan of Hydra, Lees? Seeing Natasha Romanoff looking over, Yelena said, cut off 1 head and grow 2 more heads. 9. Natasha Romanoff was also silent for a while. Yelena looked at the two and said, according to my investigation, there are many factions within Hydra, and it seems that each faction does not obey the others, so it has survived to this day. Wait. Natasha Romanoff interrupted, raising her hand. How do you know this? Yelena smiled and said, because they still want to absorb us. I was rejected. Hearing this, Bai Xi and Natasha Romanoff couldn't stop nodding. Then we had a conflict, and I had investigated one of Hydra's main bases, but had not been able to break through. 99. Yelena continued to speak. Let's do it together. Natasha Romanoff said suddenly. Hydra. This kind of organization in the dust of history has survived to the present. Natasha Romanoff would not have believed it if Yelena hadn't said it herself. Because in SHIELD'(s) file, it is stated that Hydra has long been wiped out. But Yelena knows about Hydra, which proves that it is still very big. Why doesn't SHIELD know? Natasha Romanoff frowned in thought. Where is this base? 35. Bai Xi asked Yelena. Yelena immediately opened the world map, and then the map was reduced to a range. Island. Yelena looked at Bai Xi and said, it wasn't Sokovia, but also normal. The base of Sokovia is under the control of Baron Bizimo, the old man of Hydra. Even after the base was breached by the Avengers, he didn't die. Natasha Romanoff looks at the island on the map. Immediately, he and Bai Xi looked at each other. When are we leaving? I'm ready. Yelena said, clutching her wrists with both hands. The flight device is ready. Chapter 74. In the Kingdom of Ice and Snow, a miracle appears. On the flight device, Bai Xi watched the island country silently in a trance. What's wrong? Yelena secretly grabbed his hand. She and Natasha Romanoff sat on either side of Bai Xi. Nothing. Thought of something. Bai Xi came back to his senses and said immediately. This is the first time he has come to a place with a god toilet. In such a small island country, there is still a Hydra base, which shows how widely Hydra is spread. In fact, the power of Hydra is very large. During World War II, with the help of the Nazis, it has spread to a large extent. It's just that with the Red Skull's failure, Hydra has been hit hard. But now, Hydra has also slowed down. Especially with the support of SHIELD, Hydra can bloom everywhere. The flight device suddenly rushed into a dense forest. Then the hatch opened, and the Black Widow jumped out. At the moment, has grown to dozens of people. We have to go down first. The flight device will be directly knocked out if it gets close. 99. Yelena said. They have already fought Hydra once. But apparently, Hydra has not given up on the idea of this base. Other bases will be released as soon as they are released. But this is a main base. When everyone came to the ground, countless enemies were already approaching. Yelena looked at the red dot on the watch-like instrument indicating the enemy and said, they have come, be careful. Bang. 35. After she finished speaking, a Black Widow started. A Hydra soldier who was brought down by her completely unsuspecting. Then the other soldiers were also shot. This time, it naturally represented the exchange of fire between the two sides. A real silencer is not like the one in the game that has no sound at all. At most, it makes it impossible to quickly identify the direction. Bang bang bang. Hydra soldiers were quickly knocked out. After all, in terms of quality alone, ordinary soldiers are obviously not the opponents of the Black Widows. It's just, Black Widow is difficult to cultivate. The numbers are still down. Call out. At this moment, a stray bullet flew over and flew towards Yelena. Yelena felt something and turned her head to avoid it. However, the stray bullet did not fly over. Because he was in midair, he was caught by Bai Xi. Yelena immediately grabbed Bai Xi's hand. Are you okay? She looked anxiously at Bai Xi's palm and opened it, but fortunately no blood came out. After the 500 was fully opened, the stray bullet was already pinched into a ball by Bai Xi, and his hands are still white and flawless, not even a hole is left. Bai Xi has long been able to resist these things, but the hard resistance is hard resistance, and the pain will still be a little bit. That's why Diana likes to block with bracelets of guardianship or shields. Not everyone is a Superman. He has a body of steel, and even an explosion doesn't hurt for him. Bai Xi looked at Yelena's anxious look and rubbed her head. This is a battlefield. Yelena reluctantly knocked off Bai Xi's hand and said. Then, she hunched over, raised the gun in her hand, and kept advancing. Don't bother 99 seeing this scene, Bai Xi said immediately. Speaking of which, he hasn't fully released this ability, so he doesn't know what its strongest level is. Thinking like this, Bai Xi grabbed with both hands. Frozen thousands of miles. Ice spread out from under his feet. Except for the Black Widow, everything along the way was frozen in an instant. Trees, creeping snakes, soldiers of Hydra, mountain. Everything within 1,000 miles around Bai Xi's body turned into ice cubes. At this moment, this place seems to have become a kingdom of ice and snow, and its king is inspecting his domain. At the moment, someone in the distance discovered this scene and immediately took a picture with a mobile phone and uploaded it to the internet. This is a miracle. Many islanders jumped for joy. Akiu. In the field, a Black Widow sneezed. It's too cold. The Black Widow looked at Bai Xi with awe. Isn't it God who can do all this? Natasha Romanoff and Yelena knew that Bai Xi was no ordinary person. But seeing this scene, I was moved again. Bai Xi is really like a mystery. Endless. Never know how unfathomable he is. Then, the violent Natasha Romanoff stabbed a Hydra soldier in front of him directly with her, but of the ice cube. Boom. With a little force, the huge amounts of human-shaped ice cubes turned into ice slag and fell to the ground. Even the blood was frozen, and there was no such cruel scene at all. Hiss. Everyone gasped. It's really air-conditioned here now, and I feel uncomfortable in my throat for a while. The Hydra people who are still alive in the AF area have a numb expression. The Hydra warriors they sent out just wiped out. Soon, the hologram opened, and the owner of the base immediately spread the news. The other Hydra bases immediately learned that a major base was about to be destroyed. What the hell is going on? Ophelia. The others immediately condemned her. The destruction of every Hydra base is a major loss, although they are not convinced. But it's a good opportunity to hit an old rival. It's the remnants of the Red House. Before Ophelia had time to elaborate, she heard the screams of her subordinate soft base. Bai Xi snapped his fingers, and all the ice sculptures shattered in an instant. They seemed to have turned into powder, and instantly dissipated into the heaven and earth. So much so that this area has become completely bare. The trees are gone, so are the animals. The soldiers of Hydra disappeared without a trace, and even the bloodstains disappeared along with the powder. The cold disappeared instantly, and the sun shone on the Black Widows. But their hearts are still cold. This is someone they can't resist. The Black Widow looked at Bai Xi with awe. Enter the base, be careful. 359 Yelena's voice woke them up. Boom. As the explosives were placed, the gate of the Hydra base was blown open. It is very difficult for the people inside to escape, especially with Bai Xi here. Ordinary Hydra soldiers are no match for the Black Widows at all. The best thing about Hydra is that they have a lot of people. Their slogan is, cut off one head and grow 2 more heads. Many people are more powerful is what they pursue. But the more people there are, the more trash fish. Sometimes it's useless to have too many trash fish. Therefore, it was easy to get to the base all the way. At this time, the owner of the base had not had time to escape. Bai Xi looked at the base leader in front of him as a woman. He has long black hair, but he wears green lipstick, and his whole body is green. Green tights, belt, even the boots are green. In an instant, countless guns were aimed at this woman. You are the master of this base? Yelena asked. You don't even know who I am, so you broke into my base 99. The woman opened her mouth and said, her expression still very dull. Say, who are you? Yelena looked at her too. You can call me Mrs. Hydra. Mrs. Hydra looked at Yelena and said. Then his eyes turned to Bai Xi. Without Bai Xi, her base would not be so easily breached. So, Mrs. Hydra stared at Bai Xi with burning eyes. What are you looking at? Yelena didn't like her gaze very much, so she frowned. Natasha Romanoff looked around and collected the information right away. However, she is not going to give the information to SHIELD. Because Natasha Romanoff also distrusts SHIELD now. She doesn't trust SHIELD since McFury hid her. And as an agent, it is the most correct to remain suspicious of everyone and every organization. I'm just pity. Mrs. Hydra withdrew her gaze and said, "What a pity?" Yelena asked subconsciously. "It's a pity you didn't wear gas masks." Ha ha ha. 95 Mrs. Hydra burst into laughter. She has a nickname, also called VI Peer. The VI Peer is a highly venomous VI Peer, and it could not be more appropriate to use it on her. Because she is green, she looks like a poison. Bai Xi has absolutely no connotation of Lorna's thoughts. Invisible's poisonous gas was released as early as Yelena and others came in. However, this poisonous gas is controlled by Mrs. Hydra. At the moment, when she exerted herself, all the Black Widows felt exhausted. Bang bang bang. It fell to the ground in an instant. Mrs. Hydra twisted and came to Bai Xi. "I really want to take you away, but unfortunately, you will definitely not be under my control," Mrs. Hydra said with regret. Bai Xi is so powerful. If controlled by her, you can truly rule Hydra. But she knew it was impossible. So, Mrs. Hydra directly kissed Bai Xi's lips. Then she tapped Bai Xi with her hand. "Anyone I kiss will be highly poisoned and turn into a pool of poisonous water." She smiled coquettishly. But it didn't take long for the smiles to stop. Because Bai Xi's lips were black for a moment, but he recovered immediately. The ability to restore demigods is beyond her imagination. Bai Xi also pondered for a while, then directly grabbed her neck and lifted her up. "Now, can you tell me where the antidote is?" Bai Xi said. "How is that possible?" 99 Mrs. Hydra was shocked. Before this, no one had ever been immune to her toxins. She is a master drug maker. Nothing is impossible. Antidote. 35 Bai Xi looked at the pained Black Widow. "Ha ha ha, I will not be affected by any toxins. Do you think I will make an antidote?" Mrs. Hydra burst into laughter. "Then you will die." Bai Xi's eyes sharpened and turned red in an instant. Mrs. Hydra panicked. She doesn't want to die yet. "Poison is in the box 95." She spoke immediately. Boom. As soon as Bai Xi let go, she fell to the ground. And she saw that Bai Xi's hand was only affected by the toxin and immediately returned to normal. How could anyone other than her be immune to toxins? Bai Xi immediately opened a box, which contained dozens of poison-like antidote. He frowned. "If it's fake, I'll wipe you out in an instant," Bai Xi said. Mrs. Hydra just glanced at him without saying a word. "I'll try." At the moment, a young girl who looked young climbed over. She was in pain. "Let me come." Natasha Romanoff at the moment propped herself up and said, "She deserves to be the most powerful Black Widow." At the moment still control myself not to fall. Bai Xi just glanced at her, naturally not letting Natasha Romanoff do the experiment. Therefore, he directly gave the girl next to him a shot. The girl's complexion was visibly improved. "The antidote is real." Bai Xi immediately distributed the antidote. Then, he looked at Mrs. Hydra. "What? Is the antidote really going to kill me?" Mrs. Hydra doesn't seem surprised. Because if it were her, she would do the same. "It's just that the luck in the bottom of my heart is completely gone." "What do you say?" Bai Xi asked back. "This VIP-like woman is too dangerous. If it weren't for him, anyone else would have been hit. It might even actually turn into a puddle of poisonous water." Mrs. Hydra propped herself up and said, "Don't think about raising a small animal." She likened herself to an animal. "I want Bai Xi to raise her. I have to say, at the moment she is really alluring. Her seductive kung fu is no worse than anyone else's, and she is the best. This is also her ability." Unfortunately, Bai Xi was unmoved. "I don't like animals with poison all over their bodies," Bai Xi said. "Who knows when it will poison you? What if I can't rely on it for half my life? Ahem, it's okay to break the road." Hearing Bai Xi's words, Mrs. Hydra shot herself a bullet without even waiting for Bai Xi to do it. Boom. The bullet went straight through her heart. The whole body fell softly to the ground. Bai Xi looked at her body and sneered suddenly. It didn't take long for the Black Widows to take away all the useful things here, ready to destroy the base. Everyone got out of here. The lights dimmed, and it didn't take long for Mrs. Hydra's body to move. Her stomach was suddenly torn open, and a pair of white hands stretched out. Then it's like the skin is torn open, like a baby is born. Mrs. Hydra is resurrected. It's just that she has no clothes, and no hair on her body. It was like she was given a new life. Sure enough, all snakes shed their skins. Just when she felt joy, Bai Xi's voice came. Mrs. Hydra swallowed. As if her body was fixed, she could only turn her head mechanically. Bai Xi was standing behind her, looking at her indifferently. You shoot yourself a shot and just try to get away like this, thinking I'm an idiot. Bai Xi looked at her with a smile and said. But in Mrs. Hydra's view, this smile is like the smile of the devil in hell. Nothing warms the heart at all, just endless fear and terror. Goodbye 35 Bai Xi said to Mrs. Hydra, who was bald but not stronger. The omega rays emitting directly from the eyes wiped away Mrs. Hydra in an instant. It was as if she had never appeared in this world. Completely erased. Chapter 75 Doomsday. The silver-haired girl and the dark book. When Bai Xi returned to the flight device went straight up. What's the matter? Natasha Romanoff asked. She wants to feign death 99 Bai Xi explained. Natasha Romanoff and others nodded immediately, not expecting Mrs. Hydra to have this ability. But it's no problem if it's solved. Natasha Romanoff looked at the USB stick in her hand. Here are the files of Hydra Snake. Her hands were clenched tightly, and she had a hunch that this was a huge problem. Hydra, an organization that should have disappeared from history, still exists on the ground. Countless islanders came to visit and heard what happened here. When the result came, the original trees and so on, all disappeared. There is no breath of life for thousands of miles around. We will continue to target Hydra, Yelena said. The only thing the Black Widow have to do now is to make amends for their past mistakes. Don't talk about whitewashing yourself, but it's no problem to be a good person again. And the organization Hydra, whether in the past or in the future, is evil and invisible. Black Widow will naturally want to target it. Red House and Hydra compared. That's really not worth mentioning. I'll be watching too, Natasha Romanoff said. Although Hydra is still lurking underground, as long as they exist, they will always have a conspiracy, and there will always be a day when they will be exposed. Bai Xi was sent home by Natasha Romanoff. Although he said he could go back directly, Natasha Romanoff insisted on sending him. Because this is one of the few opportunities for them to get along. Before getting off the bus, Natasha Romanoff tapped Bai Xi's face. Goodbye, dear. Natasha Romanoff finished speaking, stepped on the accelerator and left. In an instant, her face flushed red. It's like putting on blush. Bai Xi touched his cheek and wiped the red mark. Fortunately, Lana and Susan didn't see it. Otherwise, it will be a bloody storm again. When Bai Xi turned his head, he saw two figures flying in the sky. Lana, Susan. Seeing the figures of these two people, Bai Xi was immediately surprised. It's normal for Lana to fly. After all, she can manipulate magnetic fields. But unexpectedly, Susan developed her ability to such a level without knowing it. And, fast. I saw Susan's howl and flew directly in front of him. Her speed is obviously much faster than Lana's. But Lana has never pursued high speed. Because she likes to be slower and bigger. She is a big stage person after all. Therefore, Lana controls her body, her hands are still open, and her posture is very domineering. Surprise? Susan asked Bai Xi. Bai Xi nodded and said, very pleasantly surprised. Are there any other abilities? Susan smiled when she heard the words, and put her hand on Bai Xi. Then Bai Xi felt that his body weighed in vain. I can create a force field inside the human body, and explode. Susan said. She definitely didn't detonate the force field inside Bai Xi. Bai Xi took a step and said, this force field is not bad, but it doesn't affect me. Susan said suddenly, because its effect is to explode. Haha. Bai Xi laughed. Lana also said with a sullen smile on the corner of his mouth, I can now manipulate the metal substances in the human body, but the effect is not great. Is this the ability of Zuba? Bai Xi looked at Susan and smiled. Susan shook her head and said, this is all Lana's efforts. However, speaking of it, I did learn from Lana the flight ability from her. Susan's ability is actually quite comprehensive. and she is very smart and knows how to develop her own ability. Just like at the beginning, she developed her own protection ability first, so she developed the invisible force field and energy shield. Then she knew she lacked the means to attack, so she had an ultrasonic attack. Now, she is further strengthening her attack methods, and also learned how to fly. That's the benefit of smart minds. Lana is obviously dipped in Susan's light, and develops her own ability with Susan. Although Lana has been working hard, she has no direction. It's different now. 2012, the year is the end of the world zero. Because of this saying, many people don't know what kind of mood they are looking forward to. Under such circumstances, many cults naturally emerged. A group of cultists found a way to summon the devil out of nowhere. They carved images, made sacrifices, and chanted incantations. Suddenly, a massive black aura burst out of the array, and all the cultists instantly turned into nothingness and eternity. All go with your lord, in an eternal way. The figure of a silver-haired girl emerged, with a disdainful smile on the corner of her mouth. These cultists are idiots to her. Don't be a good person, but serve those Mephistus devils. Could it be that they thought the devil would treat them better? She shook her hand, and everything related to the summoning ritual disappeared. My hero, where are you? The mysterious silver-haired girl is naturally a witch from the dark dimension. She witnessed Bai Xi's heroic appearance, so she fell in love with him out of control even if she didn't even know what Bai Xi's name was. But that didn't matter, she knew that the other party was on Earth. So she followed without hesitation, using this special method. Even Sorcerer Supreme didn't care about her, but she soon discovered that when she came to Earth, her strength was weakened. Maybe it's the Earth's environment, maybe it's the formation created by the magicians of Kamatage. Anyway, her strength has weakened a lot. Fortunately, she didn't care. After all, she wasn't Dormammu, and she didn't come to Earth to do things. She just came to find her sweetheart. It's just this huge Earth. Where should she go to find her hero? The silver-haired girl saw a direction, so she walked over. She decided to get acquainted with the Earth first. Countless cult rituals take place around the globe because of the doomsday rumors. People like SHIELD are also extremely busy. Because this world really has mysterious power, it is not as fun as ignorant ordinary people think. For example, in a desert, the projection of the devil Mephisto was summoned. In a church, a book of darkness was discovered. Outside the church, a witch named Agatha suddenly appeared. She stared at the book of darkness, an item also known as the book of death. Since Bifrost was not broken by Thor's hammer, the 9 realms at the moment did not fall into turmoil. Although under Asgard's repressive rule, there were constant rebellions. But with Bifrost, Asgard's army can reach anywhere in the 9 realms in an instant. The rebellion would soon be put down by Thor. After being tempered by Hela, Thor's strength is getting stronger and stronger. Especially when using a hammer, it's a handy one. Although he realized that he is Thor, and not the god of hammers. But Mjolnir still made it difficult for him to let go. At the moment waving, the lightning power came from himself. And not just the power of the thunder and lightning from the magical affinity of the hammer. Boom. Bifrost turned on, and the goddess of war Sif suddenly came to Thor. While fighting, she shouted to the manic Thor, "Thor, more and more rebellions have occurred, and the king of gods asked you to lead the army to suppress it. What's the situation? Are these people crazy?" Tolton asked in confusion. There is no such thing as the end of the world and the 9 realms. He didn't know why the races of the 9 realms all started to rebel. After all, Asgard has ruled the 9 realms for thousands of years. Are these people not used to it yet? Jotunheim, the domain of the giants of Jotunheim. In fact, Jotunheim is not only the giant of ice, but also the giant of the wind and the mountain. However, the number of ice giants is the largest. Moreover, the giants and the Asgard are absolute mortal enemies. The primitive giant Ymir was killed by the Odin brothers together. Ymir's blood drowned most of the giants, and the remaining giants fled to Jotunheim to establish the giant kingdom. Thus, the giants of Jotunheim became Asgard's mortal enemies. Most of them are incarnations of nature, such as ice and wind. At the moment, Loth, the ice giant king, received a signal. Although Loki's previous plan failed, but now there is a new plan. Therefore, King Loth made his giants rebel without hesitation. Loki is his child after all. But King Lorf never dreamed that Loki had never really identified himself as the giants of Jotunheim. Everything Loki planned, in fact, was to kill him. ***. However, the appearance of Bai Xi disrupted Loki's previous plans and allowed King Lorf to live to the present. So, Loki thought of King Lorf again and started to use the ice giant. After all, Loki can be cruel enough to wipe out giants and Jotunheim completely. He doesn't care about the life and death of the giants at all. As long as he can achieve his goals, Loki can be cruel enough. Asgard's army immediately became like firefighters. Where there is a rebellion in the 9 realms, they will rush to it. Fortunately, with the existence of Bifrost, it can be calmed down in a very short time. But, the underground base of SHIELD. Tesseract suddenly burst into a strong light. The energy fluctuations peaked in an instant. Dr. Eric reported immediately. Nick Fury and others ran down anxiously. 18. Boom. With a bang, the shock from the Tesseract knocked everyone over, and the device failed. Loki's figure appeared next to Tesseract, holding a mind scepter. "It's you." He took a look at Hawkeye and Dr. Eric, and decided to control them. The psychic scepter's ability is so powerful that in an instant Hawkeye and Dr. Eric become Loki's people. Then, Loki reached for the Tesseract. He was still cautious. After all, this thing holds infinite gems. If Odin hadn't turned the space gem into a Tesseract, Loki wouldn't have dared to touch it directly. 0.00 The energy on infinite gems. Ordinary people can't bear its power if they touch it. Not even Loki dared to take the risk. Because of one bad statement, he exploded and died. Just like the Collector's Maid. That's not the prerogative of the Power Stone. So Loki wants to use infinite gems, only like the current Tesseract and Mind Scepter. Something has to carry the energy that infinite gems bring. However, just as Loki was about to touch the Tesseract, someone swung over and kicked Loki away. The black and white spider suit is Spider-Gwen. Gwen also picked up the Tesseract directly and put it in his arms. Loki was shocked when he saw this. Raw said, "Damn, this is Tesseract, be careful." This made Nick Fury and others who came over to laugh. They all know it's Tesseract. A bunch of idiots. Loki said suddenly. As soon as he took the scepter, the whole person disappeared and appeared in front of Gwen. Gwen didn't have time to stop, only Cobweb fired at Loki. But just so, Cobweb is tied to Loki's mind scepter. Loki simply threw the mental scepter out, and the scepter hit Gwen directly. But, the power of mind gem was activated instantly, and Gwen was also controlled by Loki. If you want to resist the energy of mind gem, you must have a strong enough heart. Clearly, Gwen hasn't gotten to that point yet. "Thank you, buy one get one free 99. Loki smiled at Nick Fury with grace and grace. Then, his magic was activated, and the group disappeared immediately. Boom. 99 At this time, the bullets of the SHIELD agents arrived. Trash. 39 Nick Fury was instantly furious. But it's too late to think about it. Because this base is going to collapse. It was originally underground, and the explosive energy generated by Tesseract directly destroyed the stability here. If they do not escape, they will be buried forever in the ground. Boom. The subsidence that occurred here once again added a touch of accuracy to the end of the world. Many people think that God is punishing them. In fact, it is indeed God. But yes, the God of tricks. Nick Fury said disgraced. Start the Avengers program. Mariah Hill, who came in a hurry, was exhausted. She watched it all and then knew what was going on. Hearing Nick Fury's words, she didn't respond. Mariah Hill just shook her head and said, "He said it long ago, that this would be a disaster." 35 Who? Yeah, Nick Fury was speechless. Bai Xi, he said that Tesseract is not a good thing. Mariah Hill said, "I definitely know, but it's too late." 99 Braised Egg said without remorse. Mariah Hill looked at him and wanted to say something, but in the end she just nodded. Maybe, Bai Xi is the right one from beginning to end. 100 million. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.